Okay, thank you everybody. This is the second part of the resumption of the Cabinet meeting, 16th of July, Wednesday the 16th of July. The time is now 6:53 p.m. Apologies to members of the public. Apologies for the brief disruption there. We've now resumed the meeting, and apologies to members of the public who weren't able to speak on the last item. We'll resume on item 7 of tonight's agenda, the Sustainability Strategy Review, and the next person to speak is Councillor Jonathan Harris. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. And just to explain to members of the public, the reason why we are delayed in starting again is because we have had people very unhappy about this paper coming to Council tonight without any discussion and dialogue, so I share their frustrations. I have 3 minutes to explain why more than 3 years of work should not be cast into the waste bin. Just like the people who were unhappy earlier on, that's an impossible task to do. 3 minutes is not enough. This sustainability work has been a rare thing, a generally collegiate cross-party piece of work that was driven by putting the best interests of our residents first for the long term. If you like, a truly sustainable sustainability framework. It has also been fundamentally about the compliance with the 2008 Climate Act and its subsequently updated target in 2019, as well as a range of other related pieces of legislation, which we will all be familiar with from the training that we had on the 19th of June. It's been about exploring the Council's powers in place to make a difference around waste, energy, buildings, transport and nature. But I'm afraid what we have here is a decision allegedly being made by Cabinet, but actually not being made by Cabinet. This is a Reform HQ decision. Should I wait for the groan this time? Because there was one earlier. It was a council that originally took the decision to include interim net zero targets because 2050 is a long time away and what gets measured gets done. This paper brings forward no real why for a removal of these targets. There are no costings, there's nothing about financial viability and no savings identified. It appears to be just an edict. The general argument put forward always with net zero for those that deny or don't want to engage seems to be about we've got such high electricity costs and it's all down to the cost of net zero. I'm afraid that's utter nonsense. But having said that, there does need to be a fair transition for people. But electricity prices in the UK have absolutely nothing to do with green levies, which is what they normally get blamed on. It's entirely due to the UK's reliance on gas and being anchored to wholesale prices. I have some bedtime reading for you all, so look out in your inboxes tomorrow because I think it's important to have wider views than maybe just GB News or The Telegraph. Green energy is now, by fact, far cheaper to produce. Now, surely it can't be a coincidence that a substantial amount of reforms funding appears to be from donors in the fossil fuel sector, some climate science deniers and some high polluters. Many are millionaires, if not billionaires. And those wealthy donors sit in the richest 1% of the world's population. And they produce as much carbon pollution as the 5 billion people making up the poorest 2/3 of humanity. It will take 1,500 years for the poorest 1% to produce as much carbon as the richest 1% produces in a year. It really does seem to be a bit like a case of I'm all right, Jack. Councillor Knoll.
Councillor Harris, are you able to ask one of your colleagues who's also speaking to continue? I'm conscious of the time and the delay we've experienced.
Yes, I'm conscious of that too, but I have got some other things I'd like to say. I did set out 3 minutes is a difficult time period.
Would you kindly pass to Councillor Ware to conclude for you, or is she speaking separately?
I will ask you my questions then, and I will write to you on the other issues to spell out my massive concerns with this proposal. The electorate of West Northants have a right to know what the collective and individual views of this Cabinet are on climate change and its mandate on the climate. Will you put this on record, please, collectively and individually? I'm not interested in Reform UK's position I'm interested in yours. This document says nothing regarding the strategy we will have to meet our obligations under the 2008 Climate Act. So what exactly is this document setting out and proposing to do against that strategy? My main concern is what impartiality and absence of bias or predetermination has been brought to this decision, given that your party leader this week has been in the national press stating that his councils will be dropping the net zero targets. No sign of local decisions made by local people, no sign of engagement for local people to be involved in that decision-making process.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. And your point noted for the record, and I'm sure the Cabinet members will speak in due course around the table. Councillor Ware, please.
Thank you, Chair. I note the purpose of the report is to ensure resources can be used to progress those projects that will provide the greatest benefits to residents. There can be no greater benefit than protecting the environment in which we live and which will be handed on to future generations of residents. I have a suspicion that this review is actually sabre rattling from a political HQ outside of our county. So I'm very interested to hear that the new administration actually has a policy on net zero, and ask that they share this in full with both council and the residents of West Northamptonshire. On to the report. I note that 2.4 states that the policy position of the new administration, as yet unclear, is to continue to deliver and develop a sustainability strategy that has direct impacts and opportunities for our residents and businesses. Yet it goes on to say that it's no longer viable to pursue the 2030 and 2045 targets. This is a contradiction. Which is it? Again, the recommendations are contradictory. Points 3.1b and c are not in line with the recommendation in 3.1a. Similarly, in section 6.1, the report lists some of the things the council is and will continue to do. It seems that what you're actually asking for is for council to keep doing what you're doing, but remove a few trigger words for your overlords. The reason the report gives in 4.1, in line with the policy position of the new administration, again, I point out that we haven't seen your policy position on this or anything other than flags, the decision has been made to no longer retain the 2030 and 45 net zero targets. So, if I read that correctly, you have made the decision to accept this proposal, and that is the reason for the proposal. Really? The report goes on to say that this will enable the council to focus its limited resources on matters important to local people, like the development of warm homes. How is the development of warm homes dependent on the scrapping of net zero targets? It's a scheme with national grant funding from government. The reason the report gives in 4.3, the lack of ability of this council to make any difference to this global emergency is not a reason. It's a matter of opinion, not fact. In addition, I think you're demonstrating a defeatist position and weak leadership. In 5.1, the report makes reference to the survey by Local Government Chronicle. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. This survey is a sample of just 300 people nationally. One could argue that that's statistically not noteworthy for the population of West Northants, let alone a general population. However, as you've mentioned it, let's make it clear what it actually does say. You say that 70% of respondents have little or no confidence in meeting the targets for net zero. What the survey actually says is around 70% have little or no confidence in meeting the wider area targets, our 2045 target. The survey goes on to say that 52% are extremely confident or somewhat confident in councils meeting their own targets for 2030. You fail to mention this. In 5.8, the report makes reference to decisions needed to be made in the late 2020s to make a difference. Unless there's some strange Doctor Who timey-wimey thing going on, we aren't yet in the late 2020s. We still have time to do the right thing. In section 8.1.3, again, the report says this council will keep doing what it's doing. I conclude that this proposal is nothing more than political grandstanding. 8.2.1 reminds us that the UK has a legally binding target for 2050. This is a matter of statute and not within our powers to change. Removing the 2030 and 45 staging posts along the way will simply make the ladder more difficult to climb.
Councillor Ware, may I interrupt? Would you kindly go to any questions you have for the Cabinet member and conclude your Speech, please. Thank you.
8.7. I will write to you in full. 8.7.1 states by directing.
May I conclude that you're finished your time?
This is my question. 8.7.1 states by directing resources into home energy improvement schemes and seeking further grant funding, we will have a positive impact on fuel and poverty. Marvellous. My questions are, how is this different from what we're doing now? Are we ignoring the home energy improvement schemes at the moment? And if so, why? This clearly links to our net zero targets. If we're keeping doing what we're doing, then let's be loud and proud and make our inroads. I ask that members of the Cabinet do not support this proposal. Rather, they consider their role in the stewardship of our beautiful county, do the right thing, if not for themselves, then future generations. Please provide clear and positive leadership in this vital issue that is the climate emergency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ware. I'd now like to invite Councillor Rosie Humphreys before speaking. Can we please try and stick to the time allocated? We ask our members of the public when speaking. It'd be good if members could set an example. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do my very best. Just one moment, sorry. This report is an embarrassment. The timing could not be more inappropriate as the UK emerges from its third heat wave. And as already mentioned, the Met Office warned this week that extreme heat and rainfall is now the norm. It's a failure of leadership to make the excuse that the Council cannot control global climate change. Local leaders being unable to control China is no excuse to give up when by law, local authorities play such an important role in delivering net zero in the powers they have. You're failing residents and local businesses and making our benighted area a laughingstock by appearing to ignore the climate emergency, the urgent need for climate mitigation, and the all-important powers that you have as a unitary authority to take action towards net zero in areas such as planning, transport, energy, waste, and nature. And while you imagine you can ignore the 3 existing strategies mentioned in the report, the 2025 Local Transport Plan is a statutory document required by government that's going to shape our priorities for the next 5 years. In its priorities is the need to address climate change by supporting the rapid decarbonisation of all modes of transport. Its 2045 vision sees West Northamptonshire as having moved rapidly to achieve the net zero emissions transport system by 2045. What do you say to all the stakeholders involved in shaping this plan, including the Youth Forum, now that the net zero objectives are intended to be scrapped? Your report does not align with the existing LTP, still less with the emerging local plan, which must, of course, follow the NPPF to pass public examination. The latest NPPF now explicitly requires the planning system to support the transition to net zero. In the regulation version consulted on last year, the spatial vision imagines the improvements to our area in the built environment, local nature recovery, the economy, and prosperity and health of residents. And, I quote, above all, West Northamptonshire has led the way in the transition to a low-carbon economy, has achieved net zero targets, is resilient, and continues to adapt to climate change. This policy leads the way to a confusing vacuum and is a kick in the teeth to the many residents who are making efforts to reduce their own impact on global warming by adapting to a low-carbon lifestyle, and all businesses working hard towards net zero. This has more than some potential damage to this council's reputation. You mentioned the 57 parish and town councils who attended a climate change summit last year. One of the objectives of that event was to support parishes in communicating climate change. This report is the worst example of climate change communication, as it fails to mention that we're experiencing a climate emergency and urgent action is needed. Haven't you seen the evidence already this summer? Food growers and farmers are struggling and parts of the Grand Union Canal are closed because of drought. I urge you to reconsider this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Rebecca Brees to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. The climate change strategy, which is the main target of this proposal, as well as the other environmental policies, went out for 2 consultations enabling those from all sides of the debate to have a say and inform the final document. Where is the public consultation for this change in focus and the removal of targets? Yes, Reform is now the administration, but elected by possibly 20% of the electorate. Where do the remaining 80% get the opportunity to give their views on this important decision? The Chair, in his introduction this evening, welcomed members of the public as democracy in action. This Cabinet paper, however, is not democracy in action. It has not been consulted upon. In 2.4 of the report, it says, and I quote, "It's no longer viable to pursue the current 2030 and 2045 net zero targets. But let's have a look at what having targets can achieve. There has never been a net zero budget or any commitment to fund offsetting or our other net zero work. All the work done and still to be undertaken had to be financially viable, either in terms of return on investment or attracting grant funding from other bodies. All the work you might class as net zero, such as the extra solar panels on One Angel Square and the EV charging infrastructure program, has been approved and budgeted on an acceptable financial return, possibly grant funding and attracting inwards investment. But the aim to achieve these emissions reductions and work towards net zero in 2030 is what has led to the development of these policies and shows the balancing act that can be achieved in pursuit of a challenging target. The proposal to install small-scale solar through the Council's own building estate and solar arrays on small plots of land it owns will, if it still goes ahead, meet the Council's existing target of 2030 almost on its own, while generating an attractive financial return for this Council. Surely this indicates that with well-thought-out investment and technology solutions, we can be ambitious in striving for targets and showing commitment and leadership to our residents that considered investment has financial benefits and contributes to the health of the planet and our communities. Later this evening, you're discussing item 10, the Warm Homes Grant Local Grant Scheme. This was awarded government funding under the Conservative administration and is coming to fruition now in the procurement of a delivery partner. These projects are the culmination of the work of the cross-party Sustainability Working Group, which I chaired. At 3.1, the recommendation says, it is recommended that the Cabinet confirms the Council's commitment to environmental sustainability, especially as it affects local people and businesses. And at 3.1b, continue to progress the sustainability project, which has been shown to have real benefits for residents and businesses and makes ongoing contribution. We haven't heard any proposals from this administration for the continuation of the Sustainability Working Group, which has proved its value in promoting sustainability and resilience programs to our staff, our residents, and our businesses. Unprecedented heat bubbles and the early drought that has been declared here in the Midlands indicate that there is something going on. And although, yes, we are but a tiny cog in this huge planet-wide issue, we want to show our residents that we have their health, well-being, and future in mind. And by setting challenging targets, we can challenge ourselves to achieve outcomes that benefit us all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Breeze. Councillor Ian McCord to speak next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the new policy direction that at least is based in reality and has the considerable advantage of being honest. However, I also think there needs to be a council resolution, as these targets were set by councils in resolutions in July 21 and December 21. Last month at council, many who have spoken berated the administration for not having a plan and a policy. Tonight, they complain that the administration has the temerity to implement the only policy arguably that it has. And those that are crying into their tofu and quinoa forget that they lost the May election. Rebecca, 2 consultations that you quoted had 101 and 92 responses respectively. The strategy adopted in March had 70 responses from residents and 40%, that's 28 people, thought it was wonderful. And more importantly, just 20% said it was achievable. That's net zero support for net zero. And I've continually asked on net zero 2030-45, how will you do it? How much will it cost? And how will you pay for it? And I've never had an answer. The Sustainability Bronze Report stated that attached to the report says this is an ambition without a plan. The reality is we don't have commercially available solutions like, say, carbon neutral bin lorries. West Northampton has never done a survey on all its buildings and schools to work out what it will cost. WNC has never given a budget for net zero short of a few £1,000s, and each year at budget time I've raised this: either fund the commitment or drop it. There is a consensus of the sensible building who see net zero policy aspirations now for what they are. The public position of the Conservative Party is to drop the national net zero 2050, Reform hold the position too, and even Tony Blair is questioning the wisdom of the current approach. Others, like Labour peer Lord Maurice Dossman and some in the trade unions, see the religion of net zero decimating jobs and are attempting to restrain the zealots. The OBR recently published a report which predicted a revenue loss of 80 billion a year. The net zero 2030 policy is unachievable. Its support comes from those with luxury opinions that can afford it. Those who lament it are the dreamers, the purists, the extremists, the communists, the anti-capitalists, the lunatic, the brown rice and sandals brigade, and those who plot their armpit hair. Well, you can pick a category. This is grounded in reality. It does not say we will not have a lower carbon or even a net carbon end state, net zero end state, just that whatever we do will be affordable, achievable, and based in reality. We will tread as lightly as we can on our environment and strike a balance between cost, practicality, technological reality, and the environment. And finally, I thank you all for helping me deliver my election pledge to my electorate to end net zero 2030, because it's in there and I have the printed documents with me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. And if you are interested in a quinoa recipe, I'll be only too happy to provide that for you later. Now move on to Councillor Lister, please, to speak. You have a microphone on your desk. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This report is deeply disappointing. It simply changes the word from climate to sustainability, removes the 2030 and 2045 dates, but offers absolutely no plan for even meeting the government's legally binding 2050 target. Let's be clear about what's really happening. We're not having an honest conversation about priorities. We're simply taking orders from Reform HQ and kicking difficult decisions down the road to future administrations. We talk about the great work the officers have done in this report, work done under the previous administration using the previous administration's targets. Whilst we cannot solve global climate change from West Northamptonshire, the changes we make locally absolutely affect our residents' lives. Whether you believe in climate change or not, air pollution harms our children's lungs and costs our services. Flooding damages homes and costs our taxpayers thousands. Our own economic strategy talks about green jobs and the green economy. The green sector is one of the fastest growing parts of our economy, creating skilled local jobs and attracting investment. By watering down our commitments, we risk losing that investment to councils showing real leadership. We've seen flooding in our villages. Our town centres suffer from air pollution that affects our children's health. If you are to go ahead with this, let's at least set meaningful, deliverable local targets that create real benefits. Solar panels on our council buildings and schools during this council term which generate income. Flood defences for our most at-risk communities. Tree planting programmes that actually tackle air pollution in our town centre. Supporting local businesses to retrofit and create green jobs. We talk about creating a strategy at some point in the future, but you bring forward changes to our existing strategies without even a vague indication of when these future strategies will come forward. This isn't about being draconian or unrealistic. It's about smart local leadership that maximises our opportunities and delivers for our residents. Cleaner air, flood protection, local jobs, council income generation. All of these are important. This report admits other councils are struggling with their targets, but that's exactly when we should be showing leadership, not following the pack downwards. Without clean targets and deadlines, this strategy becomes just another document gathering dust. Residents deserve to know, when will the flooding stop? When will our air be cleaner? When will our energy bills reduce? Set the targets, show real local action that creates measurable benefits for the people we serve. That's what leadership looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lister. I'd now like to, from the members in the gallery, invite Councillor Silas Hayes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I rise to speak in full support of this revised sustainability strategy because for the first time in years, we have a plan grounded in reality, not in rhetoric. The good people of West Northamptonshire have shown that they are ready for a change from what went before, and I believe they would be very surprised indeed to see this administration veer away from reform policy. They voted for reform. They are getting reform. Let's be honest, the previous administration set ambitious targets, 2030, 2045 net zero pledges without ever having the funding, the delivery mechanisms, or the political will to actually meet them. They promised the world, but absolutely failed to deliver little more than a collection of headlines. Meanwhile, residents were left with rising energy bills and no clear sign that those lofty ambitions were doing anything for them on the ground. Contrast that with what the administration is doing, stripping away the spin and focusing on projects that actually work for local people. Projects like the Warm Homes Local Grant, 2.6 million, to improve the energy efficiency of over 170 of low-income families. That's real action with real outcomes. We're still aligned with the National 2050 target, and rightly so. But unlike before, we've been honest about what we can achieve locally. We're investing in what matters: EV infrastructure, biodiversity, tree planting, and making sure the council is operating efficiently and sustainably. And don't just take our word for it. The investors in the environment accreditation gave us a score of 82% with a perfect 100% in environmental and social projects. That's external validation, something the previous lot never achieved while clinging to hollow pledges. This is a strategy that recognises the financial reality of local government. We can't solve global warming alone from Northamptonshire, but we can make life better and fairer for our residents today. This administration is not chasing vanity goals. It's building practical, sustainable success. I commend the Cabinet for this new direction. It's bold, it's transparent, and most importantly, it is deliverable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Councillor Keeble, would you care to join us to speak on the report?
Thank you. West Northants had a wholly laudable approach to climate change. It set targets for what was within its control and worked within the global framework. It provided real leadership and that was recognised and much appreciated. And the throwing out of that, particularly in this fashion, is a source of great regret, and it's a huge tragedy for local people and for the whole arguments around climate change. And although I don't agree with the tactics of the people who disrupted the meeting, I can understand the anger, because this kind of action of throwing out a really progressive policy widens a generational divide around climate change and also fuels a cynicism that a lot of young people feel about government, national and local. And I think we also saw that in one of the previous contributions which castigated the climate change argument. And I just say you can scrap net zero, but that is not going to stop climate change, which is a core of this argument. One of the recommendations that you have in this report is that you progress the investors in the environment accreditation. But that annual audit assesses, and the council got it, as has been mentioned, a high score last time. It assesses progress against targets, but you've just got rid of your targets. And you haven't in this report suggested any new ones. You've also said that you're going to target resources, and you specifically mentioned the Warm Homes Initiative. But as has already been said, that 2.6 million, which is given by central government, it's not produced out of local savings, is earmarked for warm homes, and it can't be used for anything else. But the thing that I think makes me most angry about this report is that it says that these policies will have a positive impact on those experiencing poverty. Everybody knows, everybody who's done any work internationally or locally on climate change, or indeed on any anti-poverty strategies, know perfectly well that climate change hits hardest at the poorest people. And we see it here in Northampton. Repeated flooding, including of Billing Aquadrome, which was flooded last year in January, February, September, and November. What assessment has the council made of the cost to the public purse of having to rehouse a whole lot of very vulnerable and very disadvantaged people, not to mention the cost of the emergency services of evacuating them? It is a real cost to the public purse, and it is a cost of mitigating the impacts on the poorest people in our community. The truth is that this policy has nothing to do with any rational approach to climate change. I'd ask for information about the targets, your new targets that you're going to have, about the financial implications, about where the new money's coming from, about how you're going to spend it, and a revision of the assessments of the impact on the poor. This is a misguided policy which is based on dogma and is not responsive to the local community and local needs.
Thanks, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Purser to speak. Last speaker, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try not to repeat points that have already been made. I have been part of the sustainability group. I think we've done a good job in creating the right environment. My concern is that there are no good reasons why you're rejecting a net zero target. You need some science. Now, I know people who say that the climate was warmer in the Cretaceous 100 million years ago, that we're heading for another ice age. I see none of those justifications in your paper here. So what is your justification for rejecting the science? And this seems to me that it's more about the climate of Clacton than the any serious thought that the Cabinet has given here. At the last council meeting, you affirmed your commitment to the One Northamptonshire plan. That's about this council, this Cabinet, this administration taking a leadership role in the area. And it's about leadership in terms of tackling climate change. We should be leading by example and bringing the whole community along to tackle it. And my concern is that this paper has abdicated our role in leading our community. So my question is, if you are rejecting this, how are you going to lead our community in tackling climate change?
Thank you, Councillor Purser. I have a note. Sorry to hear. Councillor Bignell, I apologise. I've missed you out of the order earlier. Do you still wish to speak? Please do.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies accepted, and I won't keep you long. I'm here to express my disappointment of this review paper, and especially the fact that you are no longer pursuing the current 2030 and 2045 net zero targets. The previous administration, of which I was a member, set the target of 2030, and the council was on course to achieve this. This demonstrated to the electorate that as an authority, we had a definite target date, which we were progressing towards, and showed our continual commitment. In contrast, the approach from reform is to abolish a target date. What assurance does that give to our residents that progress is being made? The whole world is in crisis, and we as a council need to deliver actions which are targeted, costed and deliverable. You, as the ruling authority, have chosen to use the government's fallback position of net zero by 25, but by then it could be all too late. Your answer is to rely on environmental sustainability, with no defined targets, in the vain hope that things may have happened before we get to 2050. Let's hope we make it. The council may say it is taking initiatives regardless of targets, but that will leave WNC aimless and unaccountable, the opposite of the swift and decisive action that we need. I suggest that it's not good enough, and you are letting the residents of West Northants down by evading delivery of target dates that they can relate to and see your commitment to saving this planet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bignell. Again, my apologies for missing you in the order. I'd like to now go to members of the Cabinet to comment. I think starting with Councillor Hastie. in front of me. Thank you, Councillor Hasty.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. At a number of meetings, I've heard comments from the opposition that we're not really a cabinet, we're a kindergarten cabinet. We can't make up our own minds. We take instructions from Reform HQ, or we take reform from Mark Arnold, our leader, or we take instructions from our other Reform councillors. I find it, firstly, deeply offensive to suggest that I have taken instructions from anyone, and I mean anyone, in Reform. Not him, not Farage, not them, not anyone. I want this to stop. I heard before that we are following a dictator. I find that deeply offensive. And we've held back from the knife fight of this charade, but it would be as bad as if I was to say that you are under the influence of Westminster yourselves. We haven't gone down that route, and I don't think it's in the right interest of anybody in Northampton to pursue that. So I'd like that to stop, please, because I make up my own mind. I stood as a Reform candidate for many reasons, but one of which is I do not personally, whether I'm right or wrong, but personally believe in net zero. I do not believe, I should clarify, I do not believe in net zero being achievable by 2030 or 2045. I'm all in favour of reducing emissions, doing everything to save the planet, but unrealistic targets basically mislead the public, commit us to costs or penalties that we just simply can't afford, as if we're just flush with cash, and we're going to risk putting other services at risk from penalties or having to divert funds, which are precious as they are scant. I cannot change the world's emissions. We seem to have just exported all our emissions, and we continue to do so. Everyone still buys iPhones, buys their cars or their rubber tires, all made abroad. We don't manufacture anything, basically. And we're going green, and we're greening ourselves back to the 16th century, if not earlier. So, I don't believe the government has provided sufficient funding, ring-fence funding, to achieve all the targets they've set us. And I don't know where the money's going to come from. So I think it is irresponsible to commit to costly obligations without secured financial backing. The Council cannot, I believe, lawfully adopt policies that knowingly could lead to insolvency, although insolvency has happened before, as we well know. We come on to things like electric-powered refuse vehicles. We cannot get power into building new buildings, new homes for just big sites, for instance, until 2028, the earliest. 2028, 2 years away from our 2030 target of having all of our fleet electrified, and I don't believe we can do it. So the thing is, I don't want to basically pretend that in 2030, when it fails, that we get the blame for not being able to achieve something we knew we couldn't achieve right from the start. So, my view is, quite simply, there is no prize for being the first lemming to jump off the cliff. And China and all the other countries are looking at us and going, well, that's fine, you can lead the way. 60 other countries will not follow us immediately because they're not so stupid as to bankrupt their own country just for the sake of some ideological situation. I'm sorry if that was a bit emotive, but I do not like being suggested that I came and sat in this room and I'm a puppet. I have my own beliefs, and I came and stood as a candidate for the first time in politics because I was fed up with being lied to, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Councillor Hasty. Who would like to go next? Councillor Lust? He's pouring water.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I just want to echo, I think you put that case eloquently. We can't commit to long-term targets that just are not achievable, frankly. And the reality is, I think we all want to get to net zero at some point in time. We're not abandoning net zero as a concept, but we need central government to understand exactly what financial backing is required to achieve net zero and to achieve the targets that the previous councils already committed to. We just have to be honest to the people, and we have to be realistic in what we can achieve in the short and medium term. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Loss. Councillor Slope, do you wish to speak on this? I can't see you, sorry. Anybody else? Councillor Manning.
Not sure I really need a microphone. Most people will say I'm loud enough before I start, so we'll go from here. Indeed. Moving forward on things such as electric vehicles, when the grid can't handle it, as stated by Councillor Hastie, we rip out substations on plants and can't get them back to 2028. How are we supposed to electrify a fleet? Electric vehicles are not the future. Biomethane vehicles are far more sustainable, and you can produce the fuel here in Northamptonshire as a product of the waste of our own food bins and from farming produce. A biomethane bus is around £295,000. An electric bus is 675. Nottingham has been moving towards biomethane fleet for years. Lidl has just stated all of its lorries will be biomethane. This is a tangible and actual task that we can achieve. This is something that is not just net zero zealotry, but actual common sense. Talking about putting solar panels on everything, the grid is not capable of handling it at this time. We're doing things backwards. We need to upgrade the grid, which is a national project, not a council, before we can put solar panels, which is why they're not on all of the industrial units, because the grid simply cannot handle it. We are paying to turn off wind farms and solar farms when they are producing at their peak, because the grid is not using that energy at that specific time, because energy storage is the problem. So trying to hit unachievable targets isn't the solution. Practical, common sense targets are the solution.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Manning. Anybody else? Councillor Stansfield, and then maybe Councillor Petty, do you have anything to add?
Well, really. Yeah, hi. Several of the councillors who've spoken tonight have mentioned that we should look at targets that are costed and deliverable. As a cabinet, we will always look at ways of actually achieving the best outcomes for our residents, such as projects mentioned by Councillor Manning. And well, we will continue to do that the best way possible for the residents of West Northamptonshire.
Okay, Councillor Stansfield, back to you before I might conclude.
I'd like to thank you, all the members and the public before their Mad Hatter's Tea Party rendition for their questions. I'll just start to. So first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor McCraw for his fine words. Thank you very much. Also, Councillor Hayes, thank you for coming and your support, and all my fellow cabinet members this evening. Going back to the first question before we were interrupted from Dave Pearson, he basically saying, you know, we're not spending less, yeah. We are being realistic on what funding is available against the rising levels of demand and social services. Against the backdrop of councils going bankrupt, we will continue our current programme and sure over time we will reach the 2050 target. Going back to our members. She's where? Where's that go? Where's he? Sorry. So, Councillor, thank you, Councillor John F. Harris, with your comments. 3 years of work will not be dropped. We will just continue, but we will continue in a balanced manner. We cannot have a target which is totally unachievable. It would be lying to the public tonight if we said that. It's not about the cost of energy. It's about WNC's ability to fund realistic targets without benefiting the local population. Councillor Ware, the target would be cost millions of pounds. To reach this target, it will cost us millions of pounds. Money we all know we haven't got. Yeah. We would have to offset our carbon emissions, right? A lot of councils will have to. And as we get towards net zero, that cost that 2030 target, the unrealistic 2030 target, the cost of that offsetting would only increase, which is unaffordable now, and it'd be even more unaffordable by 2030. Councillor Rosie Humphreys, thank you for your comments. We will continue the great work and continue to lead the way. However, where we are today, we will not achieve net zero by 2030 without spending millions of pounds on offsetting. We haven't got that money. We haven't got, you all know we haven't got the finances. When you set your in 2022, you set this 2030 target, there was no funding in place for it. We can all set a target, but if there's no funding, as we know, it's not going to happen. Councillor Rebecca Blease, like I say, no funding in place, therefore net zero. It's just misleading. You've been misleading the public, in my view, for the last, 3 years. Yeah. Because it's totally unachievable. Yeah. You're going to bankrupt your council and bankrupt your country doing this? Is that what you want to do? And put people more into more poverty and everything because that's what would happen. Yeah. Councillor says, again, thank you for your amazing comments. Thank you very much. Councillor Stallard-Keeble, thank you for your comments again. Setting unrealistic targets, which is not achievable. Yeah. There's not, obviously, from the Labour Party at the moment in national government, they're not funding 2030. They're not funding the 2030 target. They're not giving us extra income, extra funding to get to 2030 because their policy is 2050, which we are still adhering to. And then Councillor, where's he gone? Bill, Councillor Bob Purser. Can afford, we haven't got, it's all about the money. If we had an unlimited pot of money, we could maybe afford some of the things, but even then I don't think we'd get to 2030 without offsetting. Like we've already said, you cannot have, we haven't got a network of power infrastructure without, we've got 3 large development plots will be put on hold because we cannot get power to them sites. And without the power, we can't get the proper funding. Never mind trying to fund a new power for a fleet of refuse vehicles. At the moment, as you may be aware, next year, there'll be 32 electric buses coming to Northampton, which is government funded from Westminster. The charging, we've now been informed that they only can charge these vehicles from 11 at night till 5 in the morning. And they're not really even sure whether it'd be enough charge to do their daily rounds. So you can spend millions on these buses, but if you haven't got the infrastructure in place to charge them, yeah, and keep them charged, we won't be able to charge them during the day. We're not allowed to, yeah. What's going to happen? The bus breaks down halfway, and they'll have to send the diesel bus out to pick people up. And then for Councillor Lister, I find it amazing that we all sit here and you talk about, you're going forward in 2030 and all that. In my role, environment, I'm fully aware that I've just visited the Trove Depot, not far from here now. We can all go and visit if we want to. And soon you'll be able to look at their brand new waste lorries. Now, if you were fully committed to your 2030 target, you would have thought you would have purchased electric lorries, wouldn't you, and installed the infrastructure for that to start that process. But you never. You agreed as a cabinet, Conservative Party agreed as an administration to purchase more diesel vehicles because the cost is twice as much for a regular diesel vehicle. The infrastructure costs, the chargers, even if you can get the power there, is a very significant cost. And also the range of these vehicles. This side of Northampton, where you've got large geographical areas, these vehicles, they didn't even think these vehicles could do the whole round. So how does that help our population and our people, our residents? It doesn't. It just sends unsetting, unrealistic targets. If you had been, as a party, if you had been serious about what you set out in 2022, you would have got funding from your government at the time, yeah, which you never, right? And also, you wouldn't have carried on buying diesel refuse trucks. It's just a made up, stupid figure you've come up with. There's no funding in place whatsoever. And then, suddenly we have to buy a forest. So I'll ask my Conservative members over there, did you reserve a part of the Scottish forest? Have we got an area we all can go and visit and look at? Because that's what would have to happen. To carbon offset, councils are going to have to start, and large businesses are going to have to start buying parts of Scottish forests or Swedish forests and whatever. And how does that help our local residents when there's such a funding issue from national government? We haven't got the funds at the moment to do our statutory services, never mind buy a forest in Scotland or Sweden. Thank you very much. But I am happy at any time to meet any members. I'm happy to have a cross-party meeting about this. Yeah. We do want all the same in the end of the day. We do want to live in a clean, safe environment, but it's got to be done at a realistic target, not just a target of 2030. That's 5 years from now. How would you have done it? You wouldn't have been able to. And so thank you for listening, and thank you for your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stansfield. Thank you, Cabinet. I'll perhaps conclude and then we'll move the report to a vote. We need to be realistic. I've interviewed a couple of times today and I will be again tomorrow. Let's be realistic. We can't afford net zero here in West Northamptonshire. Every council, like ours, faces the same financial challenges every year to deliver its statutory services. We know we're faced with positions of large override year on year, and we dig deep to find a balanced budget at the compromise of running public services. Maybe we can do more as a party to polarise that need even more. But we can't fund net zero. The previous administration set no budgets to fund net zero, had no idea, no goals, as Councillor Stansfield rightly pointed out, was buying electric vehicles and placed orders for the ones arriving in a few weeks, not many months ago. So clearly, at the dawn of the election, there was no plan. And I was asked to quote some figures today to the BBC, and I stopped very short when I got to the figure that I have on a bit of paper in my office about the statutory override forecast for 26-27. So let's look at this, £300,000 per bin lorry with a contract expiring in 2028. These bin lorries are heavy. They have large batteries. They do less rounds. They do less distance. And like Councillor Stansfield said, we wouldn't want bus passengers breaking down halfway around their journey and having to be retrieved on another form of transport to get them back. We can't have bin lorries breaking down in the middle of nowhere, blocking roads and infrastructure. This administration is committed to creating more sustainable West Northamptonshire. We are going to be responsible custodians of this area that we govern, and we're going to take our local environment really seriously. We've got to prioritise and deliver practical solutions, high-impact projects, and make a real difference to people's lives. So in scrapping our net zero goals, and I will use the word scrapping, I think it needs to be called scrapping, it's going to enable us to do this and deliver better for people and better local outcomes for residents and businesses that are justified financially. It comes down to brass farthings. We're going to deliver better value for money for people. And to conclude, I do need to deal with the matter of name calling and things that have been cited in the press and my administration being called paper tigers. I find it quite weird that a Liberal would actually use a Maoist communist statement to slur a member of government. But anyway, it flatters me, Councillor Harris. At least this paper has a plan, unlike soggy manifestos and promises left behind by other parties. If ambition alone, ladies and gentlemen, could power homes, we'd be off the grid by now. Okay, and whilst other people climb onto their UK 100 badges like comfort blankets, we're going to deliver outcomes and deliver meaningful results for communities. So scrapping net zero targets is not a retreat. It's a recalibration of ambition anchored in reality. So whilst those badges can be hugged, like honorary titles, we're going to focus on deliverables, ones that don't dissolve in press releases and don't require magic money trees to generate. So if I'm a paper tiger, I'm dread to think what other people might be called, maybe watermarks, not visible until held up into the light. And maybe that light's idealism. I'd rather be accused of bold reform than rehearsing platitudes that have warmed more homes than speeches. This Cabinet's here to do its business, not to chase applause. And I thank you, Councillor Hastie, for your points earlier. We're going to make decisions that do withstand criticism, but they do deliver value. And above all, they serve our residents. And on the 1st of May, net zero was on the back of every leaflet produced by Reform UK. And every resident who voted Reform UK voted for that, and they must be heard. So to conclude, I'm going to ask the Cabinet to move the motion, and then a seconder, and we'll take it to a vote. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Last, seconded by Councillor Hastie. We may take a vote, please, ladies and gentlemen. All those in favour of the recommendations? Unanimous, thank you. I think we need to note there for the record that that's the first UK council to remove the targets, and hopefully I'd like to see not the last. Thank you. We move on to point 8 in the agenda, the provision of financial data. I'm sorry, I run the risk of our chairman calling it the Mark Arnold show again today, but this one is my report and I'll be only too pleased to deliver it. So, members of Cabinet, members and those in the gallery, I'm pleased to present this report today, item 8, for the consideration, which proposes the authorisation and sharing of specific categories of financial data with the Reform UK Department of Government Efficiency. The initiative reflects on our Council's enduring commitment to fiscal responsibility, transparency and the pursuit of excellence for our residents. It is indeed what we campaigned on going into the election. The data in scope consists exclusively of information in the public domain, such as expenditure exceeding £500, contractual arrangements, historic budget monitoring and audit reports. It's going to emphasise, and it's important to advise, that this collaboration will be governed by stringent confidentiality protocols with the officers appropriate, so sensitive data will not be disclosed. The Doge team comprised of experienced software engineers, forensic auditors, I've had the privilege to meet some of them already, data analysts, etc., have offered their expertise on a pro bono basis. Their objective is to assist us in identifying inefficiencies and further opportunities for cost savings across areas including adult social care, home to school transport, which we all acknowledge is significant, and items such as temporary accommodation. So while I acknowledge the concerns expressed regarding procurement and governance, and I've received numerous correspondence from all members, from all parties, and I've acknowledged, and I hope, and I will say that I believe the report acknowledges as those emails have been received. The legal department has undertaken a comprehensive review and appropriate agreements are being finalised. So subject to this report being concluded tonight, then those delegated powers to sign and enter that agreement for the council are signed. So I just to make a point before I commit this to Cabinet is that I should say that this isn't a tool or resource or whatever that's not available to other parties present in local government. And I do note that there hasn't been a proposal from any of the opposition parties to carry out such a piece of work with their own resource, which is freely their entitlement to do. So I do take pride in what our party is being able to put together here for our local residents. And I hope in due course that we can work together and my Cabinet and officers will deliver some meaningful further efficiencies. So I respectfully commend this report and proposal to Cabinet, and I'll go forward to the speakers that are listed to the item to discuss. And the first one on there is Councillor Lister.
Thank you. I want to begin by acknowledging something important, that this council has achieved remarkable efficiency gains, 150 million in 4 years. That's exceptional performance that demonstrates the dedication of both our officers and the previous administration. But I also do acknowledge the challenge that we face. A 25.9 million budget gap is serious. So when the administration talks about seeking efficiency savings, they have my support in principle. The question before us today isn't whether we should pursue efficiency. Of course we should. The question is how we pursue it. I have serious concerns about what's being proposed. We're being asked to approve sharing data with people we cannot name, our most sensitive information to be shared with unknown individuals with unknown qualifications. But let's be clear about what this really is. This is a council run by Reform UK, with a proposal brought by Reform UK councillors using volunteers who have offered their services to Reform UK, branded using a term adopted by Reform UK. The Local Government Act 1986 is explicit. We cannot provide assistance that could be seen as supporting a political party. This isn't politically neutral and it is politically branded. We already have extensive internal audit, LGA peer reviews, ongoing transformation programs. Are we really saying that all of this professional expertise has missed savings that political volunteers can find? But I'm not just here to oppose, I'm here to propose a better way. Why don't we establish an all-party efficiency committee, an independent chair, including officers, retired officers, representatives from our parish councils and residents, hold monthly public meetings, accept efficiency suggestions, and ensure transparent democratic oversight. Let's partner with our university for analytical support and make use of their knowledge transfer sharing partnership, giving us their professional expertise without the cost of any additional consultancy from a third party. However, if the administration is determined to proceed with this proposal, I call for the following safeguards to be recorded. Establish a cross-party group of leaders to depoliticize the process. Require full disclosure and approval by this group of every individual accessing our data. Ensure cross-party scrutiny of all the recommendations before implementation, and guarantee that any outputs remain council property with no Reform UK branding. Our residents deserve transparency, accountability, and governance to the high standards. They deserve to know that when we're facing a £25.9 million budget gap, we're using professional, non-partisan approaches to find solutions. Choose the path that serves our residents best, not their political party. Thank you.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Thank you, Councillor Lister. Councillor Irving Swift.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, I will read from my telephone and I need my glasses. So thank you for letting me speak on item 8. Some important facts about the Council before the May election are made in this report, and they are: the Conservative administration has delivered a balanced budget 4 years running, saving nearly 115 million during the period, an average of 6% efficiency year on year. The Conservative administration had a robust transformation program, see the paper 5.4. The Conservative administration were with Grant Thornton, the external auditor, and all the findings are in the public domain. The Conservative administration, with officer, asked the LGA to do a peer review. Also, that review is in the public domain. The Conservative administration establish a best practice third chamber to monitor existing budget and to prepare the next budget. Today, your administration will take the same approach as the Conservative to put together the budget 26-27. Read carefully paragraph 2.3. The new administration is already in trouble. So will this paper help the current situation? Now let me turn to the purpose of this report. The Conservative, we have always been in favor of making the Council as efficient, resilient, cost-effective as possible. The current administration decides that analyzing the data is key. The data has always been publicly available to all of you before the election. And that should have been your starting point when you were campaigning, so you could get running with when you were in administration. So after 2 months in power, elected to govern to our local council, the administration is proposing that DOD come to WAC, all non-elected, non-known to us councillor with no knowledge of local government. And all this with not a scrap of paper given to officer. So no audit trail, but we have the promise it is free. Well, I will be waiting for a lovely free lunch. To top it all, those very well qualified volunteers will have to take a sort of insurance, just in case, and you read in the report 7.2.132, for the Council to be indemnified against any loss of damage arising as a result of data sharing. Well, good luck for that. Furthermore, the most precious gift of our local government, of the English system, is the impartiality of our officer. Having non-elected volunteer with the same political party as the administration, for me, the Dodge team, Is this wise? I will put it very even strongly. Could it be challenged in court? In short, have the courage of your conviction, no gimmick, a proper procurement process which will establish one and for all the best utilization of our data in order to give every resident best value for money. I hope you choose this path, and I will be reading this report with great interest. As the saving found by the chosen consultant should, according to the administration, outweigh the cost. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Councillor. You're always welcome. Councillor Sally Keeble to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. Decisions about resource allocations are the most challenging of all the decisions that any elected representatives ever have to make. Weighing up the competing demands of different sections of the public is extremely difficult and is not something I believe that can be delegated or outsourced. And the more people who are involved in it, the better. I have some serious questions, though, about this particular proposal and about the implications for the council and for the information. Firstly, who exactly will the agreement be made with? The emails that were disclosed to me as part of the Freedom of Information request were from Reform UK, and they listed the company registration. They did actually list the wrong company number. They put the number for Reform 2025, which is a company with only two directors. One is Nigel Farage and the other is Richard Tice. So I think we actually need to be completely clear about who the arrangement, who any agreement is being made with. And I think it would also be really good if all councillors could see a draft agreement so they can see what's being proposed. I'm very surprised at the assertion in paragraph 722 that this arrangement would not be subject to procurement legislation. A preferential arrangement is being proposed with one company to the exclusion of others that would provide that company with a competitive advantage. And that type of privileged information without any market testing or procurement, I believe is wrong. Thirdly, how much will it cost for officers to provide all the information that's set out in Appendix 2? Because you'd certainly never be allowed this amount of information as an FOI would be said to be financially unfeasible. If all that information is being provided, please can it be circulated to all members so we can all see it and we can all then have the benefit of being able, have the advantage of being able to put in our own comments and suggestions. And I'm sure that we in the Labour Party would be really happy to involve some of the people that we've got in our party nationally who've got expertise in local government finance. I would hope that we can, I would certainly hope that we can get some good decisions about the very tight pressures which are on the council's budget. But I believe that that will be best achieved through involving more, not fewer people, and through making sure that information is transparently provided to everybody and not selectively to a few people, however good their intentions might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Bob Purser.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is that this DOGE process is actually a distraction and an irrelevance, and it will cause us to take our eye off the ball. And the ball is that we face very significant financial pressures in the well-known areas. We've got adult services, transport, children's trust and temporary accommodation. These are going to be resolved, in my view, partly by painstaking graft through the Star Chambers process, cabinet members' meetings, probably discussions with government, and I guess the head of finance will have some dark arts which he will apply along the way. the Labour Party in its manifesto put forward that this council has to move towards prevention services. And the chief executive at the last cabinet meeting drew my attention to the fact that I was being overly pessimistic about the difficulty of that. I believe we have to move as a council towards more prevention, earlier intervention, so we avoid some of the heavy costs that we currently face. Now, how could Doge help? Well, I understand that you've got very close links, or Doge has very close links with the private finance sector, with private finance trusts. 2 years ago, I brought a motion to council looking at why the costs of residential care were out of control. That was because of the role of private finance trusts in the provision of children's services, pushing up the cost of residential care. I hope Doge will meet with those people and take a serious approach to reducing the financial pressures that private sector finance has placed on our children's services. So will you do that? Will your team look at that area of financial pressure?
Thank you, Councillor Person. We can come back on all the points at the end and summarise, if that's okay. Next speaker I have is Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. There are plenty of points on the last item that actually factually correcting, but I will take the opportunity to do that independently. But I do have to call out Councillor Hastie. You have used the language of knife fight at least once before, and given history in Northamptonshire, I don't think that you should be using language like that. So I hope you take that as advice rather than anything else. I actually want to a large extent, commend officers on their support on putting this document together. I know it's not a difficult, not an easy situation for them, and I think actually they are doing the right thing to make sure that this is all handled as appropriate as it can be. You mentioned earlier on, Councillor Miller, that no other parties come forward to ask to do this. Well, that's because usually that is the job of the elected representatives when they're elected, working with officers to work out where those opportunities for savings are. So whether that's correct, wrong, bad, that's generally what's happened in the past. The Cabinet comes in, the Cabinet works with officers to work out those things for themselves. It's never happened before that I'm aware of that we contract other people in to come and do that work. I hope what's happening is there's a dawning realization. I suspect there was a view that you would be able to come in and find masses of money hidden away in little cupboards somewhere. Well, actually, I think what you're realizing, and again, this is not defending the previous administration, this is just a reality check. The lemon has been squeezed in West Northamptonshire, and actually there is only so much squeezing of that lemon you can do before you have nothing left. We've seen an 18% real terms lower funding hitting councils generally across the country since 2010. And this is reality biting. So I hope that there is a realization that it isn't just about efficiencies, it is going to be about looking at investment opportunities as much as it is about savings. And I'm not clear at the moment whether that is effectively being picked up and focused on within this area. The constant language is about efficiencies. Efficiencies are great, but actually it is now going to be to need to focus on investment for, opportunities. I have got some serious concerns still remaining, despite being more assured than I was. One is around procurement. We are going to be having individuals that I hope will get due scrutiny. There's a conversation that we have had. We don't know those people from Adam. Reform might do. We don't know who those people are. So I hope that there is absolute clear scrutiny about those individuals and the skills that they bring. The reason I ask the question is because if you look at the US model, there was a lot of opportunists taking place in that Doge activity in the US. A lot of opportunities for people trying to look for how they could maybe get a few contracts here and there to see what they could make out of the situation. Now, again, I have been assured that is not going to be the case, but it still concerns me because the billion-dollar question for me is, why for free? Why for free? There's no such thing as a free lunch. We've had that conversation, I think, many times. There is a very specific focus, and again, great, well done officers putting together all of this information on a plate that's already in the public domain. But in this extra document, it does strike me quite interestingly, there's a lot around digital and IT. My question is, why so? Unless, again, there's some opportunist looking at that. Quite right, demand-led services, yes, all of that makes sense. But there are some areas in there that does look, again, that it's looking as if it's there to be politicized. So again, I recognize the work that Sarah in particular has done on this to try and ensure that you follow the rules. And I guess that's my final message, really. I hope you are clear collectively on the legalities around this and what it means and what it doesn't mean. Any opportunity to take advantage of it in an inappropriate way will be called out.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. And our last speaker is Councillor McCord. Please come and join us.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I should start with a little bit of agreement with everybody that's spoken. Bob, I absolutely agree with you that the public sector has been screwed by the money men, and especially in children's care. And if Doge can look at the 10 county councils they have, all of which have children's care, and see is there a pattern here, that may actually be helpful. And Dan, you made some really good proposals, and I would support them. But why didn't you do it before? There is nothing more opaque and more secret than the process that closed the gap in the budget setting from the previous administration. And Jonathan, I absolutely agree with you that Reform thought that maybe they could walk into One Angel Square and find a room marked Department for Silly Ideas and another one beside it called Department for Wasteful Spending, close them down and job done. And maybe it is going to prove a little more challenging. Nonetheless, thank you for the report, and I think it answers most of the questions that I raised in my letter to you on the 4th of June. And it's good to know that we're not planning to use restricted special personal data. And I'm grateful that the request that I put from the Place and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee, that the output goes there has been at least acknowledged. But I note there's no commitment to actually share that data with the Resources Committee. Last year, and to date, we were running some artificial intelligence pilot schemes, and those were being offered for free or reduced special rates by the big consultancy firms. The preventative analytics was looking at multiple markers and attempting to predict a person's likelihood of being homeless or suffering from domestic abuse. That was highly personal information, arguably a good thing. And many of the previous members praised the approach and what wonder might come out of that data. But can I be assured then that the data sharing agreement we had with them is the same as the one being proposed now? Is everyone being held to the same standard? There was nobody saying, oh, why are they doing it for free then? Which they were, because they were, well, I think I know, they were building a model that they were hoping to sell to others. Nonetheless, can I also thank officers? The list of links at Appendix 1 is very welcome, and I suggest that we publicise that far and wide. Too often people cry, we should know this and we should know that and we need to find out what's going on, and it's all there. You just have to look, and that document, I think, is really good. Nothing is hidden, you know, it's not the MOD. Appendix 2 is asking for similar information that Scrutiny has been asking for, with, I must say, limited success. In Scrutiny, we attempted to look at the demand services, and I'm not really satisfied we ever got to the bottom of it. All I know is that each year, children and adult care budgets are blown, and demand is cited as the excuse for the reason, or the reason for it. And we clearly, therefore, have a problem in predicting the demand accurately. And any tools that will better forecast that must be welcomed. And adding the medium-term financial forecast to the opening deficit for next year is useful, although I did note there's not many numbers. And we need a lot of clarity from government, as I expect this council is going to get clobbered as they tinker with the funding formulas to help Labour councils, while non-Labour ones are going to have political motivations. And, you know, these are politically motivated actions also. So I shall be watching this very carefully, and I'm a little more assured, but I'm more assured now than I was whenever the Doge thing was launched with great fanfare, but I will still continue to watch this very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. There's a few points on there. I'll summarise shortly, but in most cases, I'm happy to have the open dialogue with the members that have spoken and provide that reassurance and the answers. It's absolutely something that could have been done before, and it's beneath most of the team reform as to why it hasn't. So it is a unique thing that we have available to us, and it forms part of the substantive report tonight. In terms of Councillor Purser's point about the services, you're absolutely right, Councillor Purser, and it is hoping that the learnings that we see there, if there's any commonality amongst the councils, that it can only be done for the wider good, greater good of society. So, thank you for your contributions. I'll now move to members of the Cabinet to speak on this. Councillor Last to go first.
Thank you, Chair. I think my first and foremost thought is that, and I want to echo some comments from Councillor McCord, reform don't have a monopoly on good ideas, okay? People, parties in the past and past administrations have had the opportunity for a Doge-style engagement and a top-down review on how we can save money. So this is not something that, is reserved for the Reform Party. It's something that we're implementing to see if we can have another tier to look at spending across councils and see if we can actually save some money. I myself have been working outside of Doge with officers to save money in certain areas in the IT department, for example, and those activities will go on in parallel with what's happening with Doge. AI, which we've already committed to, is going to help us streamline our business and the different departments within the council. If you look at taxis, for example, to send students to schools, we have instances where we have taxis being paid for taking children to school when the children are actually off school. If we can use AI to make sure that those taxis are full and we spend in that money as efficiently as possible, then that's a good thing, right? So I think as a council, we should embrace this initiative and see if we can make some real results and make a dent into the shortfall in our finances.
Thank you, Councillor Last. Councillor Stansfield.
Yeah, it's just about the comments from Bob Purser really about the PFI. I'm not sure Sally Keeble's full history and the Labour Party's full history, but I'm aware that most of the PFI was brought in during the new Labour administration, wasn't it, from Tony Blair? It was pension, PFI was mentioned, and obviously the dual with childcare, the child costs of child services.
Just for clarity, we don't have any PFI in West Northampton adults and street lighting, nothing to do with children, for clarity. Thank you, Anna. Anyone to speak? John, would you? Councillor Slope.
Thank you, Chair. No, some very good points raised. In fact, my colleague, Councillor Hastie, has made some detailed notes on each point, and I think that covers it. Thank you.
Councillor Hastie.
Thank you, John. Okay. Councillor Davis, I'm not going to apologise about using a metaphor that's commonly used in the English language, but I will apologise if you were offended by it in any way about the idea that in any way I'd be bringing a knife into this arena. However, I do understand your sensitivity, so I'd like to retract that and replace it with pillow fight. You also mentioned that if to cause offence, Councillor, was not the intent, it was a metaphor, but that sounds, but so I'm not being flippant about anything to do with knife crime. It's just an English metaphor. Councillor Lister, I understand and I do recognise the situation regarding the whole business of data protection. But I do think it's rather right that the Conservatives are not holding up the gold standard of data protection, given the news about Afghanistan currently. So that's kind of ripe. I do applaud Bob Purser's comments. I totally agree with you that we need to have a thorough deep dive into private companies who are providing services, because I think we're just being exploited because we haven't got the resources to provide in-house services ongoing. So I applaud that. And I think the problem with the significant financial pressures that we face is coming from a Labour government that simply can't control the welfare state, as demonstrated by its recent bill that got overturned. It can't even control its backbenchers. So the situation is we are facing increased statutory obligation to make payments where we simply are not getting the funding in to actually cover it. And it doesn't seem, I'm concerned, that doesn't seem to be any end in sight of that at the moment. So those are just my comments, Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of Cabinet to speak? Councillor Butler, anything on efficiency and potholes today? Nothing. Super. Councillor Manning? Coos? Or Shaw? Good. Super. Okay, I'll conclude and wrap up on that then. So, I mean, I think it presents an exciting opportunity for West Northants Council. Sorry, I haven't invited Councillor Petter to speak. Are you okay, sir? Good. I think it presents an incredibly exciting opportunity, as I've said a number of times to the press and media, that for a party to do this so early on in its administration, set a new standard, really, looking at things in different ways that they've been looked at before. So the methods that are being proposed by Reform UK are not standard methods. For example, our home to school transport budget in the region of £20 million, and understand to date, and this is not a criticism of the good work that officers do, but it's a very time-consuming and detailed manual process. And as Councillor Last pointed out, we'll no doubt have things that it's missed. And if this software can identify those things, and I'm quite excited to hear that. And as if I may quote Anna, when we spoke a few weeks ago in our media into it, it's an exciting time when we're doing budget setting and those star chambers to do this. And I can't understand why there's so much opposition to doing that in that sense. But I do hear the sentiments of the opposition, and some of those were shared indeed by our members. And to Councillor McCord's point, you're quite right, sir. When the first announcements were made to the of Doge coming, then there's a different reception in different areas. And I'd thank our officers here in West Northamptonshire for the diplomatic work we did between us to allow Doge to take place in West Northamptonshire for the good of the residents. And after all, it is that very reason we all sit in this place today. I don't have any more to say on the matter, unless there's any officers that would like to contribute. I'll take this to a vote. Okay, we'll have someone to move the motion, please. Move the proposal. Councillor Last, seconded by Councillor Slope. We will have a vote with a show of hands, please. That's everybody. Unanimous, thank you, and that's passed. I think we will look at the time, and we had a delay, and possibly take a short break after the next item for a quick rest break if anyone needs the bathroom. Can we go on to the public health report, which is item 9 on today's agenda? I'll invite Councillor Laura Coos to introduce the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the paper for the Public Health Framework Refresh 2025 to 2027 for information. The first Public Health Framework was developed in 2023 following the disaggregation of the public health team to ensure that the public health grant is used appropriately. The purpose of the framework was to clearly set out the statutory duties of the public health and the DPH, the conditions of the public health grant and different funding strands, the financial position, including reserve spend, national and local priorities for public health, commissioning arrangements. Having now been established within the West Northants Council for 2 years, processes and procedures have been reviewed and improvements made to streamline governance in public health, and therefore a refresh of the framework was necessary. The framework sets out governance mechanisms to ensure a robust approval process is followed and which ensures spending meets grant conditions. An updated oversight, monitoring and reporting process has been implemented to track and monitor spend and performance. The recommendations is that the Cabinet note the contents of the attachment and approve the adoption of this refreshed version of the public health framework going forward, and to note that any spend above 500k and which is deemed a key decision would be recommended to Cabinet for approval in the usual way. As such, I commend this paper to Cabinet for approval and look forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coos. Appreciate your contribution there. I've got two speakers registered down here, starting with Councillor Fartun Ismail. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. And I have I've spoken with the Cabinet member, and I believe you share my concerns. And given the persistent and deeply rooted health inequalities across our communities, particularly affecting those facing poverty, poor housing, and limited access to healthcare, it is essential that our public health strategy directly tackles these inequalities. The public health report did not outline the procedures for contracting and details of past contractors awarded. So can you please, as the Cabinet member, outline what strategy is in place to ensure the public health program from our council is actively works to reduce the health inequalities, and what measurable goals will be used to track progress, as well as how the social determinants of health, such as income, housing, and access to health services, will be considered in the design and delivery of public health interventions. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ismail. I've Councillor Aldridge to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to really focus on the delivery of the public health framework. And the 4 public health domains set out for the use of public health grant are health improvement, health protection, population health care, and tackling the wider determinants of health. And I'm going to go back to some of our earlier conversations and discussions. In addressing the wider determinants of health, it is that cannot be achieved without a focus on climate change and net zero targets. This domain includes promoting healthy and inclusive environments and living conditions. The link between climate change on health and well-being of residents in West Northamptonshire is not an abstract notion. There is extensive national and international research that shows that climate change is directly impacting on physical and mental health in measurable ways. I want to just highlight 3 specific areas in respect of West Northants. 2025 alone saw 600 heat-related deaths in England and Wales, with experts linking this rise directly to climate change. In West Northamptonshire, the growing elderly population is expected to reach nearly 167,000 people aged 65 plus by 2027. This group is particularly vulnerable to heat-related cardiovascular and cerebral vascular issues. High temperatures have also been linked with increases in psychiatric hospital admissions, anxiety, dementia deterioration, and aggression. Second area, climate change is bringing more intense rainfall and flooding, and I think that was said several times earlier. One UK-wide study found that flooding is already linked to higher rates of PTSD, with around 30% of flood survivors developing it. In West Northamptonshire, local flood events have displaced residents, for example, in the Billing-Acrodam area, with broader regional warnings highlighting stress and anxiety linked to such events. Areas near the River Nen and River Tove, including Far Cotton and Delapre, Bugbrook and Toaster West, are at particular risk. Final area is areas in West Northants suffer from poor air quality. At times, residents inhaled the equivalent of nearly 190 cigarettes per year. A 2024 West Northants Joint Strategic Needs Assessment connected vehicle emissions and domestic fuel burning to increased asthma, COPD, and inequalities-related respiratory issues. Air pollution levels are the highest along the A45 corridor and central Northampton, affecting in particular...
Apologies, Councillor Aldridge.
I'm just finishing, my question is coming.
Thank you.
Okay. So it does affect this particular area, St James, Kingsthorpe North and Castle. So my question is, can the Cabinet member explain how this council intends to implement the public health framework fully in the absence of a clear commitment to addressing climate change and setting clear net zero targets? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aldridge. I believe I'm seeing an indication that Ms. Laura, Councillor Lucas.
I just want to say to Councillor Ismail and Councillor Aldridge that I've taken note and consideration of their comments, and I will come back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. I'm going to invite Stuart Timmis to speak. He's just requested. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to give assurance that all the work we do as part of the wider determinants of health, which many of you would have heard is probably the best regeneration document strategy that's ever been produced. And that was produced by Public Health England. And that's something that I'm very proud of in West Northants over the last 4.5 years, is the relationship between place and public health and how we've worked together on all of our documents. There is a document that we're coming on to, the park strategy. That was very much a joint piece of work, one that was co-designed, if you like, with public health. You talked about air quality and the Air Quality Action Plan. Again, a document that was co-produced with public health. The flooding strategy, again, something that we work with colleagues across the council in a collaborative way, making sure that all aspects of flooding and the impacts of flooding are understood. And I'll come finally, sorry, I could go on for a bit longer, but conscious of time, the local plan, which we're about, again, to hopefully come out to consultation, and members will have a role in developing that document. Very much worked alongside and in with public health in terms of the health impact assessment that we do on the plan, which hopefully brings all of those things together, looking at the right development in the right place, good housing, good environment, etc., etc. So the work that has been undertaken is in conjunction with public health, and that close working relationship will remain and continue as we go forward. So hopefully that helps Councillor in terms of that particular challenge. But thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. I really appreciate your input there. I'm going to invite Anna to comment.
Thank you, Chair. Stuart, so I was going to say, I think the whole thing about wider determinants is kind of built into everything we do. And probably, something to add to there about the way we work with partners, not just obviously regeneration, but health partners and other partners in terms of the things that we think about and those wider determinants. I mean, it's a very, very well-known thing, for example, of course, that mental health crisis is often caused by housing and debt issues. I mean, these things are very interrelated and we're very conscious of that. I just suppose picking up Councillor Ismail's point as well, obviously this framework is describing how we go about contracting and how we make sure that what we contract is delivering what we need and that we have robust processes to make sure they're monitored. Of course, underpinning every single contract we've got, we have a number of public health kind of national measures of wider determinants, of inequalities measures, and they're all the contracts have them as underlining kind of outcomes and then very specific measures to check that we're actually moving things in the right direction in terms of reducing health inequalities. Probably the final thing I would just say is members would be aware that we've got this concept of local area partnerships, and public health have done a massive amount of work across those area partnerships about understanding really local communities and very local issues in terms of those inequalities and wider determinants. Very different issues in one place for isolation, for another place maybe COPD because of some of the other challenges. And for those, we've produced very, very specific measures for every single lap and then tried to work on how we target improving those very specific poor outcomes or poor performance that we get in those areas, which is really evidence-based working on a very limited budget. But I just wanted to reassure you of that. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. Are there any members of Cabinet which to speak on the report? That's a no. Okay, Councillor Coos, anything to conclude before I move that to a vote? Can I have a proposer for the report? Councillor Manning, seconded by Councillor Shaw. Thank you. We'll take that to a vote, please, with a show of hands. That's unanimous. Thank you. At this point, given the temperature in here and the time and the agenda ahead, we'll take a 10-minute break for a rest break, if that's okay with everybody, and conclude in 10 minutes. Okay, we'll move on with item number 10 on tonight's agenda, which today is the procurement of a delivery partner for warm homes, the local grant. I think everybody's back in their seats. We will ask Councillor Stansfield to introduce his substantive report. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Today, I'm pleased to bring forward a report that represents a significant step in the ongoing commitment to tackling fuel poverty and improving the lives of our residents. As many of you know, our council's anti-poverty strategy recognises the severe impact that fuel poverty has on our families across West Northamptonshire. It's a sobering fact that as many as 1 in 4 of our residents, over 15,000 people, were affected by the fuel poverty as recently as 2019. This issue is made worse by energy-efficient homes, which are harder to heat, colder in the winter, and more expensive to run. The purpose of this report is to seek Cabinet approval to procure a delivery partner for the government's warm homes local grant scheme. I'm proud to say that the West Northamptonshire Council has secured 2.6 million in a grant funding through the scheme. This funding will allow us to improve the energy efficiency of approximately 180 homes. Over the next 3 years, with an average investment of 12,500 per property. These improvements will make real and lasting differences to the lives of our residents, especially those with low incomes. The Warm Homes Local Grant replaces the previous home grade upgrade grant, HUG 2. I could do it, HUG, which ended in March. Unlike HUG 2, which was delivered through a regional consortium, this new scheme requires us to act independently. To ensure we can deliver this scheme effectively, we propose to procure a delivery partner who will work alongside our officers to manage motion, application, and most importantly, the installation of energy-saving measures. A soft market test earlier in this year was confirmed that there is a strong interest from potential partners. 10 responses were received and 5 were shortlisted for further engagement. We are confident that a competitive procurement process will yield a capable and committed deliver partner. We recommend that the Cabinet delegates authority to the Director of Communities and Opportunities to procure this partner using a dynamic purchasing system or framework and to negotiate and award the contract. This approach will streamline the process, reduce resource demands, and ensure we are ready to begin installations by the autumn. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stansfield. And we have 2 speakers from the members registered, starting with Councillor Purser, please.
Yes, Chair, welcome this report and welcome the application to central government, a Labour government providing the funding. So we are doing practical things to achieve this, and there are huge challenges both in our private sector housing and our public sector housing. And fuel poverty is a real challenge for people. And we know from the pilot, one of the good things that we've done in West Northamptonshire, and one of the good things that the MPH actually did, was to do some of the pilots on this warm homes things, and they showed that you can reduce housing costs, heating costs, to 1/3 of the previous level with a well-insulated house. So this is a really important area that we've got to do more. To me, the great challenge is our terraced houses. And particularly my ward, we've got lots of them, and insulating them is a real challenge, and we've hardly started. So I welcome this. It's only 180 houses, better that it was 1,800, better that it was 18,000 really, but that's the scale of the problem that we face. So more power to everyone involved in this, and I hope that we can continue to take advantage of these schemes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. I'd like to invite Councillor Christine Ware to speak, the second registered speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome the news that West Northants Council have secured grant funding for the Warm Homes local grant. This is welcomed by our communities, some of whom face challenges of heating or eating in the colder months. It's good news that Hug 2, which has significantly helped some of our residents already, is getting a new phase. I have 5 questions for you. They are: what analysis has been done to establish the additional workload required by our team for the new iteration of Warm Homes? Number 2, how did the consortium manage this work previously, and what lessons have we taken from them? Number 3, it's mentioned that additional risks and significant resource costs are associated with an in-house solution. What are they? Given WNC administered Hug 2, what exactly are we looking to outsource for Warm Homes local grant? And my final question, how will we make sure we stretch the grant funding as far as possible to benefit our residents? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ware. I'll take questions to Councillor Stansfield from the Cabinet, please. Anyone to comment? Councillor Hastie from Housing.
No, clearly, obviously, we welcome this, and yeah, echo Bob's comment that yeah, it'd be nice if there was some more.
Councillor Stansfield.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Councillor Purser. Thank you for the comments, and we would love it to be 18,000 houses or not 180. I welcome your comments as well. We will come back to you with a full response on that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any officers wishing to comment? Okay, I'll conclude. I see a timer. Maybe that's set for me. To conclude on that, I might add some comments to echo what Councillor Purser said. I think there's a key point there. And if we look at terraced housing, particularly having been someone who's renovated one, and you wait till it snows, and it still does occasionally in this country, you see that I have all the snow on the roof and everybody else's melts quite quick, and it highlights the absolute salient point. So I welcome this too. That is a point I will raise with my audience with Lucy Rigby MP, Casey MP this week, and see if we can do more for this area and bring more funding in as we commit ourselves to our residents. So if there's no further comments on this report, we'll seek a proposer from the Cabinet, please. Councillor Stansfield, seconded by Councillor Coos, and we'll take that to a vote with a show of hands. Thank you, everybody. And on that note, we will move on to item number 11 on the agenda, the affordable housing acquisition. We return to Councillor Hastie to introduce the report. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. So the affordable housing acquisition, the recommendations are we're asking Cabinet to approve the proposal to acquire the property subject to satisfactory due diligence having been undertaken and approval by the S151 officer. And we're also asking delegates authority to the Assistant Director of Assets and Environment in consultation with the S151 officer, portfolio holder for housing and the portfolio holder for finance to negotiate and acquire the properties and enter into any documentation required to complete the acquisition. The reason for the recommendation and background, this report seeks Cabinet approval to acquire 8 one-bedroom flats for affordable housing which form part of a new housing development scheme in Brackley, Field View. The development is an S106 site, which has consent for 71 properties, of which 8 are to be made available for affordable housing. These 8 properties are proposed to form of 2 blocks of 4 one-bedroom flats. The developer has engaged with a number of registered providers to take on the ownership and management of these affordable homes. However, this has been unsuccessful, with RPs citing that the scheme is just too small. The developer has approached the council to vary the S106 agreement to allow the affordable housing units to be changed to another 10-year discounted market sale. Due to our housing need and demand for affordable housing and a desire to deliver new affordable housing across West Northamptonshire, the council is keen to retain the provision on the site. The council can utilise existing approved funding streams, including historical commuted sums negotiated on other development sites in Brackley, in lieu of the provision of affordable housing on site and the capital funding allocated via the Local Authority Housing Fund Round 3. A key component of the LAH3 funding is the provision of properties that can be used for temporary accommodation purposes and also the acquisition of new build properties. This would provide 4 properties for general needs housing and 4 properties to be used as temporary accommodation. The Council has an immediate need for the provision of temporary accommodation and also a delivery plan to deliver more affordable housing. The properties acquired from the LAH fund will form part of the general needs housing stock in the medium to long term once our need for temporary accommodation reduces. The properties funded through commuted sum monies will form part of the general needs housing stock, and households from the Council's housing register will be nominated to those properties. Due diligence and financial modelling has been carried out and a conditional offer has been made and accepted at 1.386 million. This conditional offer is subject to a RICS approved evaluation and contract. The units are expected to be delivered during 25-26. If the Council chooses not to purchase these properties, it is likely we would lose the provision of an affordable rent product on site to a low-cost market tenure. So in closing, this proposal will deliver much-needed affordable housing, and whilst the demand for temporary accommodation exists, will also alleviate this pressure and reduce our reliance on more expensive temporary accommodation options. So I would commend this paper to Cabinet, and I would ask for support.
Thank you, Councillor Hastie, an excellent piece of work. Speakers registered this evening, we have 2, commencing with Councillor Rosie Herring. If you still wish, I think there's a microphone over there for you.
And thank you for saying it was an excellent piece of work, because obviously it was the previous administration that brought it to fruition. It's just taken this length of time to conclude. But I just wanted to ask Councillor Hastie what allocation you are going to have to these properties. Are you going to have any local connections, for instance? And is it going to be allocated from the general temporary accommodation, or are there specifics involved? And perhaps you can elaborate on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herring. Councillor Keeble, I have you down second. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was actually quite concerned about this particular proposal for a number of reasons. One was that it looked like it was a developer who got stuck with delivering a Section 105 agreement and was looking to the council to take on the properties. I mean, I completely understand all the issues about housing need and the need for social housing and affordable housing. But if other registered providers who are working in the area aren't prepared to take it on, it does suggest that there's some issues around the proposal, and it might be because they are they're one-bedroom flats. I appreciated the extra information which you gave, which I think wasn't in the report, about the split in the use between general applicants and temporary housing. I just wonder how many people on the West Northants waiting list for one-bedroom flat with a priority banding are actually looking for accommodation in the Brackley area. And I'd be also think that provision of 4 temporary units for single people, or one bedroom, it would be for a couple in that place, would also not perhaps be top of the priority list. I'm also concerned about the what market testing there's been, because by my calculation, the properties are costing about £173,000 each, you know, just looking at the crude figures in the report, which would actually make them quite expensive in terms of affordable, either affordable or social housing for rent, which may be why the other providers weren't so interested in them. And finally, we did approve at Planning Committee was it yesterday or the day before, a major new housing development in Brackley, which included a very large element, hopefully, of social housing. And I wonder if that will actually meet the needs, even though it's slightly delayed. So with those questions, I would question the value for money of this scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Hastie, would you like to answer those points before we go to the Cabinet for input? It might be your choice.
Basically, very good points. I always put my hand up in the air when I cannot give you the best clarity or clear answer on that. So on those 2 points, I will ask Director of Communities and Opportunities, Jane Carr, to respond on that. That's not me dodging it. That's just I want to give you the correct information.
Thank you. Sorry, so we're not setting a local connection with this, with these units. We don't set very many local connections, and it's not in our existing policy to do that, partly because we don't want local connection to exceed where need is. We do have assessed needs, certainly coming from our housing register for 1 beds in Brackley, so we're absolutely clear that these properties will have people waiting for them. We are allocating from general needs from the housing register, so it will be through our choice-based letting system, so exactly the same as anybody else can bid for a property. They'll bid for property in Brackley, but because we've got assessed need on the housing register, we know that that's available. Temporary accommodation, again, will be from whoever needs temporary accommodation, who's next in the flow. So if somebody will go to Brackley for temporary accommodation, and quite often people will go to temporary accommodation where they wouldn't necessarily want permanent housing. So we do have a need for it. And also for some of the domestic abuse cases, it's better to be out of the area. So there is a need for those as well. Okay, and why the other Ps have not gone for them, the feedback that we've had at the moment is because of the number of units is too small for them to take on in that area. We already have other properties in Brackley as well that we're working with, so as a council, we've got stock already existing.
Thank you, Jane, for your input there. So open that to the Cabinet to make any points, questions? None at all? Okay, thank you for all in agreement. And as I said, an excellent piece of work, and I acknowledge again what Councillor Herring said about it was a previous piece of work, a legacy piece of work that we're bringing forward here today. So acknowledgement to everybody who's worked on that. Well done. So if that's the case, we'll ask a proposer from the floor, please, to take this to a vote. Councillor Coos, seconded by Councillor Manning, and a vote with a show of hands, please. Okay, that's all passed. Thank you. Okay, we move on to item number 12 on tonight's agenda. That's the West Northamptonshire Council Estates Strategy. And I invite Councillor John Slope to introduce the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This evening, I'm bringing forward 2 closely linked reports. The first, which I've introduced now, sets out the West Northampton Estates Strategy, while the second, which I'll come to shortly, deals with the specific transactions we propose to undertake in line with this strategy. The strategy may not grab the headlines in the way individual asset deals might, but it's a vital piece of work. Because without a clear direction, our estate becoming a burden rather than a tool. This document lays the groundwork for transforming how we manage, use, and invest in our extensive estate of around 1,700 assets, ranging from historic monuments and parks to offices, libraries, and schools. Our aim is simple: to ensure our estate enables better services, greater efficiency, and smarter investment, so that we deliver maximum value for our residents. That's particularly vital at the time when public finances are under pressure, and we must be absolutely focused on outcomes that matter. This strategy aligns with the new pragmatic approach to sustainability that Cabinet endorsed earlier this evening. The strategy is built around 5 key priorities: a fit-for-purpose estate, a well-managed and maintained estate, collaboration with partners, optimizing revenue generation, and empowering growth and development. Together, these 5 priorities form a strategic reset. They give officers a clear mandate and help us ensure every building, every piece of land, works for the public good. This is a coherent, evidence-led strategy. I recommend this strategy to Cabinet and look forward to our discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Slope. So I have two speakers now down, starting with again, Councillor Herring. Please do come back.
Thank you. And for transparency, for the start, I'm the appointed representative for the South Northants Voluntary Bureau, SMVB. And it's on page 132. I noted a particular paragraph which really alarmed me. It's under the Voluntary Community Social Enterprise and Faith Group use of property. And it says, we would not normally charge such groups rent, but they would cover costs such as maintenance, security, general building management, and if applicable, business rates. Now, SMVB are responsible and help run the Toaster Larder, which is helping thousands of people in Toaster. And they also coordinate a great many of other voluntary endeavours, such as the warm homes and garden buddies and local transport to hospital, etc., etc. With lots of support from our Chief Exec, Anna Earnshaw, and Stuart Timmis. It was negotiated that the building of Riverside, which was declared redundant and was actually going to be demolished, be allocated for community use, there being such a lack of community facilities within Toaster. And so it was going to centralise all the community groups into the Riverside property. Now, if you ask them to actually sign a fully repairing lease and the roof goes, they're in for hundreds of thousands of pounds. Basically, you're giving with one hand and taking with the other. You would bankrupt the charities. And I'm sure there are plenty of other, this is just an example I know of, but I'm sure lots of the other groups that are using council assets and council buildings would feel the same way. This paragraph seems to be hidden away in this report, but unless it's some part of a devious reform plan to get rid of all charities that are providing very important community benefit to our disadvantaged groups. Please, I would ask that you pass, if you want to pass this report, that you add an amendment to look again at that particular requirement, because it would be devastating for charities and they will not be able to sign. I'm sure all of the people with business experience and legal experience would realise that you cannot commit yourself to repairing all of our buildings at a charity's expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herring. Second speaker, Councillor Purser. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd pick up that issue. It is always a vexed issue, the relationship between voluntary sector bodies and when the council is the landlord and the funding thereof. And it does need a lot of thinking about, and if that's something to be taken away from tonight, that is very good. I have the scars from that from previous other local authorities, so I know well the problems. Can I, but just to start, can I thank our assets team? I think they're all too small a team for the demands that they've got, and they inherited, I think, from the predecessor councils, a bit of a nightmare, just knowing what they've got and actually putting them together. And I think they've done an excellent job getting to where they are in the 4 years that they've done so far. And I believe they inherited from previous administrations going back 15 years, a succession of non-decisions and bad decisions and just a nightmare. And I think getting it into some sense of order is that they should be commended for that. But we still have huge challenges because of that inheritance, which I think is, in some ways, was scandalous. The things that I'm a bit concerned about are that we're in a very changing world. with increasing use of IT, of data, of AI. We've got to get this prevention agenda going and understand what the building requirements, the space requirements are if we're going to get into this prevention world, because it's going to require space. And if we're going to, there's something about how do we get out of silo working within our local authority and bring together the benefits of different teams working together on shared challenges. And I think that has space implications as well. So I think that's I'm afraid to say to Simon, I'm afraid that's a further challenge for you. And we've still got, I think, some unresolved problems, which I think the report kind of skates over quite lightly, like the one-stop shop at Angel Square and getting that to work properly. I think that's a real challenge for us. We've got the problem of a future accommodation for the town council in Northampton, which seems to have gone on with great pain for a long while. There's the issue of accommodation, office accommodation for MPH staff. The current situation, I believe, is not tenable, not acceptable. And again, we've had plans that have come and gone. We just need a plan that is properly fixed. But that kind of has to be linked with the MPH hubs and how, as MPH works more closely with the council, what are the benefits that could be there in terms, they've got bits of plant that I think could help other bits of the council achieve its jobs. I'm going on too long. But we've also got the challenge of some of our historic buildings as well, which I think are a huge challenge for us. So what I suppose my final point is that this document's a bit light on the finance. How are we going to pay for the ongoing maintenance of our buildings? How do we maximize, how do we get the income to do the maintenance? There are some buildings, there's one in my ward that is rotting because it needs a significant chunk of investment. How are we going to pay for that? So I would have liked to have seen a section on finance in this document, but you can't have everything, and it's great that we've got to where we've got to tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. We'll go to Cabinet members and officers for any input if need be. Simon Bowers to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Just picking up Councillor Herring's concerns, the section on VCS use is actually based on the council's existing policy on the VCS use of property. It isn't setting out a new policy position, but reflects the council's existing policy adopted by Cabinet, I think about 2 years ago now. Generally speaking, it's right to have a clear set of requirements. If you're going to occupy a property, you are responsible for it. It avoids all kinds of arguments. Charities up and down the land do accept full maintaining obligations. Every charity that owns a property, by default, if they own it freehold, is accepting full maintaining obligations, and there are millions of those. And there are many leasehold arrangements of a similar nature. So I don't believe it represents a barrier to a charity, taking proper account of the liabilities it's taking on, to taking on a property in that way. And indeed, in the specific example quoted, the charity is well aware of what's proposed and hasn't objected to that. So I don't think that needs to be a concern. We are going to be looking again at the VCS use of property policy later this year, and if there are any tweaks, they can be looked at then, but I don't think that's a cause of concern. In relation to Councillor Purser's comments, I think for the most part, I'm not going to try and answer them because they weren't really for answering. And yes, you're right to some degree, the report skates over them because it's a high-level strategic document, and therefore, by definition, it doesn't go into detail. But in terms of the money, what we've tried to be clear is by adopting the approach the strategy sets out, we will get rid of property that we don't need and has no valid purpose. That immediately removes the liability. In the case of historic buildings, the same applies. Obviously, at the moment, as well known, we are currently marketing parts of the County Hall site and parts of the Guildhall on that basis. So the report can't solve everything in relation to money, but what it can do is set out that clear strategy which identifies how we minimise the financial exposure and then bring things that we do retain into the right order.
Thank you, Simon. Hopefully that answers your point, Councillor Herring, but I'll go around the room and hope maybe some more contributions. Stuart and Tim is to contribute. Thank you.
Just a very small extension of what Simon was saying there. Again, Bob asked how are we going to afford some of this, and some of how we're going to afford it is by working with the voluntary sector, working with the other businesses, etc. Voluntary sector can get access to grants that we can't. And therefore working with them and closely and making sure we hold their hand in some of these asset issues, we can find solutions that we as a council can't find. So there is behind the policy an opportunity that does sit there. And again, I'll go to Bob in terms of this, how are we going to work better together? Following on the strategy, as you will always find, there's an action plan will come forward. Within that action plan, we'll talk about family hubs. Within that family hubs, it's exactly the methodology that Bob is pointing to. How do we get the right people from health, social services, public health, housing in the same room to make it easier for our residents to access, etc. So that is something that we'll be looking at rolling out as we go forward. So the devil's in the detail, or in this case, the detail is in the plan. The plan will follow, but it'll bring together all of that thinking that Simon has outlined earlier. Just thought that was a helpful addition, Chair.
Thank you, Stuart. So we'll go to questions from the Cabinet. Anyone first? Councillor Hastie, anything to add?
No, Chair, but I do recognise, and I personally firmly behind the larder, both in Woodford Horse and everywhere, working with them, Miranda Wixon, getting around to see them and doing the best we can. Again, I wish we could do a hell of a lot more, but certainly Karen at the Woodford Horse larder is doing a fantastic job in my wards there, and we are, and also the Briars Hill food bank done by the IT guy, one of the IT officers, David Wells, visited that last week. So, yeah, I mean, I wish we could do an awful lot more, but I do recognise that they are an absolute link to the community in troubled times.
Thank you. Are there any other officers or members to contribute? Okay. Councillor Slope to conclude.
Thank you, Chair. I think there were very useful comments and contributions that were made. It is a difficult area, and balancing budgets, trying to attract new investment, having a look at these older buildings that we look after. As mentioned, the voluntary sector, they can tap into new sources of different sources of funding that we can, but it's I think, as Councillor Purser mentioned, there's a lot of efforts gone into this, and it's been going on for a little while. Let's be fair, but we've picked up the ball and we're running with it, and we're not trying to dodge anything. So thank you for your comments, and let's keep working on this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Slope. So if there's no further input from anyone, we'll move this to a vote. May I have a proposer for the report? Councillor Hastie, seconded by Councillor Shaw. And we'll take a vote on that with a show of hands, please. Thank you. Unanimous and passed. Okay, we move forward to item number 13 on the agenda this evening, the reprocurement of a customer records management system. And I invite Councillor Last to introduce the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And in the interest of time, I appreciate it's been a marathon session for everyone so far. I will paraphrase this report where possible. The purpose of this report, the corporate contract for the customer records management or CRM system currently provided by JADU is coming to an end in May 2026. Our CRM solution is critical for the delivery of our services through Customer Services Department, as it allows for the recording of customer contact, allocation of work and cases, monitoring demand and performance, and forecasting future demand and service provision. This report seeks approval for the re-procurement of a CRM solution and sets out the process we will be following to secure the most appropriate and cost-effective solution. This report sets out the current provision, the process we've undertaken so far to understand the requirements for the new solution, and the findings of the engagement carried out with various departments and teams who will be the future users of the system. It provides Cabinet with the details of the proposed approach to procurement based on legal requirements, best practice and advice from the procurement team and the timeline associated with this activity. Full financial details, and it must be stressed at this point, full financial details are not yet available until engagement with the provider starts, but the approval of this report will allow us to start early negotiations to secure value for money and the best value contract for the organisation within the available financial envelope. Currently, the Customer Services Department use JDO CXM as the corporate CRM solution. This is a cloud-based solution. The contract is currently in the final period of extension allowed, which is 3 years +1. The full cost of the contract over the 5 years is estimated to be just under £760,000. The DTI team have been working very closely with customer services to develop integrations between CXM and the back office system. All CRM solutions need a level of integration using APIs and so on to tailor the solutions to the needs of any business. In order to meet the needs of the service, a contract for a CRM provision needs to be in place before May 2026. The main options are option A, preferred compliant direct award via the G Cloud 14 purchasing framework, point 20 and 29 of the direct award guidance, cost and technical difficulties involved in changing suppliers. So once you've established the CRM solution and you've developed those APIs into different systems within your organization, it's very costly to then change to a different solution where you have to effectively rework a lot of that integration. Option B, mini competition via the G Cloud framework. So the rationale here is if JDO can't meet the essential requirements captured in the requirement scoping exercise, then we'll have an option to look at other solutions potentially. In terms of recommendation, it's recommended that Cabinet A approves the process for re-procurement of the corporate CRM system, direct award via the G Cloud 14 framework. B, gives delegated authority to the Executive Director of Resources to work with the Assistant Director for Customer and Corporate Services to secure the best contract specifications and value for the organisation. And C, gives delegated authority to the Executive Director of Resources to award the contract to the provider following the outline process ready to start in May 2026. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Last. Registered speaker, I have Councillor Daniel Lister. Would you care to comment, Councillor?
Thank you. This report contains no evidence on how well our current system actually performs. We've got no user satisfaction data, no performance metrics, no reliability statistics. How are we supposed to make an informed decision about whether a direct award is the best way without any of this basic information? This is the backbone of how we serve our residents. Every phone call, inquiry, request for help flows through our system. They deserve a procurement process that prioritises ease over excellence. The report talks about a residents' access strategy and improving customer experience, but provides no measurable targets, no performance indicators, no way to hold either ourselves or JDO accountable for the actual improvements. They haven't even confirmed yet whether they can actually make the improvements that we're asking for. Where is all of this data, and are we going to see it before we make this decision?
Thank you, Councillor Lister. I'll go back to Councillor Last if you wish, or to questions from the Cabinet first. Your response?
I'm happy to respond.
Please
Chair.
do.
So first of all, as I mentioned right at the beginning, this is not a procurement of the JDO system. It's Cabinet's, it's seeking Cabinet's authorisation to continue the procurement process. All options are still on the table. If we look at the criteria for selecting a CRM solution and JDO meet those criteria, then it would make sense financially and for other reasons to continue that contract. However, if they can't meet the requirements, and we do have additional requirements that's been set, we would like them to tailor the system even further, then of course we've got the option to look at other solutions as well. This is not set in stone as a procurement. This is authorization for Cabinet from Cabinet to continue the procurement process. In terms of the feedback that I've had about the JDO software, I haven't heard a single bad report from any officers or DTI employees about the JDO system. And largely as a council, we're happy with JDO as a solution right now. As I say, there's things that we would like to do. One of the really positive aspects of JDO is the company is small enough to be agile to our needs. So if we do need any APIs creating, they've always been very responsive to that. And I think working in partnership with a software provider like that is a refreshing breath of air, to be honest. And, you know, we want to try and embrace that if we can. But again, nothing set in stone right now. This is purely authorization to continue the procurement process.
Thank you, Councillor Last. Are there any questions from members of the Cabinet to Councillor Last? Okay, any officer input required or necessary? No. Okay, in which case we'll move on and take that to a vote. I'll need a proposer from the floor. Councillor Manning, seconded by Councillor Stansfield, and a vote on that with a show of hands, please. Okay, that's passed unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 14 on the agenda. It's a bit more exciting and referenced earlier in the proceedings. So this is the Parks Development Strategy, and Councillor Nigel Stansfield to introduce the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I am pleased to present the Parks Development Strategy to Cabinet this evening. The purpose of this report is to seek Cabinet's approval for the strategy, which sets out a clear and ambitious framework for how we will protect, enhance and invest our parks and open spaces across Northamptonshire. This is a strategy I feel personally passionate about. One of the reasons I stood for election was to ensure our parks are not only protected but improved. And this document gives us the tools to do just that. The executive summary outlines how strategy has been shaped by strong public support and close engagement with our partners, including public health and the NHS. It recognises the vital role parks play in supporting health and well-being, biodiversity, heritage and community pride. It also sets out how we can manage these spaces more sustainably and cost-effectively, while we explore new funding opportunities such as biodiversity credits. The strategy is built around 6 core principles. Number 1, a safe, accessible network of parks across West Northamptonshire. Number 2, a space that supports health and well-being. Number 3, protection and enhancement of biodiversity, heritage and landscape. And number 4, community engagement and pride through partnerships. 5, securing investment in our parks. And 6, making the best use of public money and assets. These principles are the actions that follow we strongly supported in a public consultation. We also respond to specific feedback, such as requests to explore improvements at the parking at Abington Park. The importance of this strategy is not just about improving what we already have, it's about creating new parks where they are needed most. The 5 proposed new or renewed parks are the Battle of Naseby Country Park, Brackley Country Park, South East Northampton Country Park, Westwood or the New Woodland, and Eastern Northampton Park. We also continue to explore opportunities such as the former Bedford Railway line and other unused spaces. Reflecting on my time at Grange Park Parish Council, we adopted a more nature-friendly approach to managing our open spaces. After some initial uncertainty and negative feedback from the residents embraced the change. Meadows of waving grass replaced manicured lawns, and biodiversity flourished. We're now exploring how similar approaches could work across West Northamptonshire. We're currently spending around £4 million a year on grass cutting and shrub maintenance, mostly through the Viola Idiverde contract with similar contributions from other providers. We ask, is this the best way to, is there a better way? Could we reduce costs and improve biodiversity through more natural methods, like meadow planting, coppicing, or even generating through income through biodiversity credits? Let me be clear. We may not achieve everything in this strategy. This is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of ambition. If we aim for 5 new or renewed parks and deliver 2 or 3, there's still a success. This is still a success. If we don't aim high, we risk achieving nothing at all. Every intervention will be tested, and everything we do will be guided by one principle: delivering value for people, for nature, and for the taxpayer. The recommendations before the Cabinet are to approve the Parks Development Strategy as set out in Appendix A, endorse the 6 principles as a basis for future decision-making, note the intention to develop the delivery plan and explore funding opportunities, and support the continuing engagement with local communities and partners. Chair, I recommend this strategy to Cabinet, and I look forward to working with colleagues, partners and residents to bring this to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stansfield, and again, an extensive piece of work of the highest quality. I've got 4 speakers listed for this, starting with Councillor Rebecca Brees. Please come to the table.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to hear how passionate you are, Councillor Stansfield. But this is a strategy that I've nurtured over the past year with officers, and I'm really pleased to see that it has come here unchanged. WNC has a lot of space in the form of parkland, and it's valued and used by our residents. And actually, the budget for parks is actually tiny. I know you've referred to the grass cutting, which sits under Idiverde and so on, but that's a highways and environment pot. The parks is a few £100,000 after you take out the income that it brings in. So it works very hard, this strategy, a big strategy for very little in the way of funding and income. You have also outlined the big ambitions that we had and that you're going to carry forward. And the country parks in Brackley and Naseby would be most welcome, particularly Brackley, which has seen enormous growth in the last 5-10 years. Battle at Naseby, very important historically, and potentially a new linear Eastern Park in Northampton. And so I look forward to seeing how you as an authority might come forward with proposals to actually deliver them in due course. An area that I think is largely untapped and I was seeking to nurture was the work of volunteers. There's a huge pool of volunteers who do already work with our parks team under Peter Hackett, but I think there's still a lot more that can be done, and it's a largely untapped pool of skills and energy and enthusiasm. Volunteering provides not only a huge amount of social good, willing helpers and improvements in general and mental health, but creates a sense of pride and, importantly, guardianship in our park and assets. If we have volunteers involved, people really do take ownership. There were various volunteer initiatives underway before the change of administration, and one thing I'd really like to understand in due course is what your proposals are to take on this sort of pool of talent that's available. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brees. Councillor Keeble. You've got a microphone by you if you wish to stay there. Yeah, please do.
I'm really glad that Councillor Stanfield is so passionate about parks, because I share that and I very much welcome a strategy for them, and the impressive list which is set out there shows the heritage that this council has got. I think there are a few missed points in this and a few areas where perhaps things could be speeded up with a view of aiming higher, which is what he said he wants. The one is about that parks are beautiful. Parks in urban areas can be transformational in terms of the lives of people who are more disadvantaged. So I don't understand why the parks and open spaces in some of the most disadvantaged areas of West Northants haven't been prioritised in this strategy. For example, Swanhaven Park, which is actually a surface water drainage system for the local estates, and also for the new extensions up in Overston in Moulton, needs urgent improvements. There were some which were due to be completed in 2025. I don't think they've actually been started, so it'd be good to know when that's going to happen. Swanhaven Park takes in Lings Wood. It could also take in Fox Covert Wood, which is quite a major problem in that area. And there's nothing about Victoria Park, which has been an issue recently in terms of law and order problems. And then there's no proposals for Dallington Park and nothing for Miller's Meadow. There's one area that would probably get very quick approval from him, and that there could be a very quick win by providing a proper park entrance to Bradlaugh Fields, which is in his ward. There's a current entrance on Kettering Road at the shopping centre, which is a pair of scruffy metal poles, and then the land is quite rough behind. And the same applies to the lovely Nen Walk up past Sharman Lake, that you actually enter from behind a disused car wash near B&Q in the middle of town. Now, if you look at, for example, at Rushden Lakes, where they integrate shopping and park and activities which encourage the use of the parks and the open spaces, particularly for people who might not ordinarily think of getting in the car and driving out to a country park, that kind of integration is so important. And I'm sure that with just a little bit of thought there, it could mean that families could really enjoy the parks when they go shopping and they go out for other recreational activities. So welcome the report. Please aim even higher, particularly in those more disadvantaged areas where parks and urban open spaces are critical for people's well-being and for a whole range of social factors.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Next speaker, Councillor Ashraf. I think you've got a microphone there as well.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the Parks Development Strategy and its ambitious vision. However, I would like to raise some important points based on my lived experience as both a resident and local councillor. While West Northants Council may have inherited a variety of urban and country parks, it's become increasingly evident that some parks receive more attention and investment than others. For instance, Abington Park consistently benefits from resources, perhaps due to its central location, accessibility, cafe and museum. While its popularity is understandable, this prioritisation has led to an imbalance across the wider park network. During the COVID pandemic, just to remind everyone the importance of open spaces, I personally spent countless hours in my garden with my children just to feel the sense of escape from the isolation of lockdown. For those lucky enough to have a garden, it was a lifeline, but many in our communities solely rely on public parks for that freedom and connection with nature. I'm fortunate to live near two local parks, Dallington Park and Victoria Park, which I visit regularly, yet the difference between them is stark. I recall visiting Dallington Park one day to find it had been transformed, new landscaping, modern play equipment, and renewed vitality. In contrast, Victoria Park has remained largely unchanged and underfunded for years. Since becoming a councillor in 2014, I've consistently lobbied for investment in Victoria Park to replace its worn, outdated, and sometimes unsafe equipment. But time and time again, I've been told that other parks were higher priority or that funding wasn't available. Victoria Park holds special memories for me, especially my childhood, and so does many other young people. It just isn't a park. It's a lifeline for those young people to experiment the outer world. And the equipment, although they are catered for different age groups, it's really important that they have the opportunity to obtain physical exercise. Today, it still plays a vital role in our community. Families gather there, parents catch up with friends, there are dog walkers, footballs, people simply enjoying being outside. If we truly want to deliver on the 6 objectives outlined in the park strategy, then funding and resources must be distributed fairly across all our parks. I would like to understand how the parks listed in your report were selected and why Victoria Park is not among them. Since the floods in 1998, the community around Victoria Park has continued to face challenges, yet there's been very little investment to reflect this. Are we really saying that the parks listed in the report are more important than this one or others that serve equally vital roles in their communities? To encourage real engagement and build community pride, we need to be thorough. Inclusive assessment of all our park assets. This should include working closely with friends of park groups, litter groups, engaging residents and schools, and involving them directly in the design and development process. I recently
Sorry
consulted...
to interrupt you, Councillor Ashraf, you've gone quite a long way over time already.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions you could
Yes,
sum up for
I'm
us?
just coming to that.
Thank you.
I recently consulted the council about replacing the equipment, and I'm pleased to say after 11 years, my persistence paid off. I've managed to get the agreement. But my questions are, please secure equitable investment for all our parks. Use public funds fairly and stop prioritising some wards over others. Ensure our parks reflect the diversity of our town so that everyone feels welcome and included. Support community-led ownership and stewardship, because when residents are involved, they help keep parks safe, clean and thriving. Let's ensure that every park, not just a select few, receive the care and investment it deserves. And my last point is, can we revive the Parks Management Committee, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashraf, and thank you for the opportunity you've had to spend with Councillor Stansfield out in your ward area. It's well received. Councillor Harris, do you want to pass the microphone along to save you coming up? It's up to you.
Thank you, Chair. I again welcome this report. There are some specific questions, and I'm afraid I do need to be parochial because obviously Brixworth Country Park is in my ward. There's a specific comment in the report which talks about removing unnecessary barriers between WNC-owned Country Park and Anglian Water, who own the Pittsford Reservoir. So I'm just needing some clarity on what that actually means. I'll be candid, I have heard some ideas being mooted around about a camper van site by the side of the water there. I'll be honest, I've not found anybody that supports that at all. It's not actually mentioned in the strategy. So I hope that means it's not included in the strategy because it is a country park. There are 2 campsites that are very close proximity to Brixworth Country Park. It does not need camper van parking locations. And if that point means that's what that's about, then it's a big no from my perspective and not just mine. The challenge, I think, always is maintaining the balance between nature, biodiversity and activity and attraction. And I recognise that, of course. But we've got to make sure that we don't try and make it Butlins light specifically. We do need to bring people there. But there are some things that I think would help do that, that in fact are not in the strategy, and I just want to briefly mention those now. The first and obvious one, and there may be plans for this, I'm not aware of it, there used to be Rutland Cycles there who obviously had a hire facility as well as a shop facility for cycling. And we now have no facility for that at all. It's a perfect location for hiring out cycles. There are some mobility that we offer within the parks team itself, but we don't have a full range of cycles particularly. And I think, to me, that would be an obvious thing to try and develop. And if we're talking about transport hubs, for instance, that again potentially could connect and lead to that opportunity. The other one for me is, as you know, we did get a budget amendment through a couple of years ago to support some activity on Saturday mornings for parking for park run and open water swimming. That seems to work very, very well, I have to say. I have had a request for the establishment of a youth park run on a Sunday morning. So again, I would like to flag that as some consideration. That's for 4-year-olds to 14-year-olds. So I think that would be a brilliant idea to get people connected into the natural area, get them young. Hopefully they stick with it for longer. So just flagging that as a future point, really. Also in my area, Brampton Valley Way, a couple of points on that, really. I think Brampton Valley Way is great. It should be kept as natural as it possibly can be. We still have some obscure misalignments. There's a lot of focus on this being a linear park and the great biodiversity that that brings, but it still sits, or at least it sat in the last draft of the local plan under transport for the potential reopening of the Brampton Valley Way. You knew I was going to raise that, I'm sure. Again, it's lots. Is it going to be that, or is it going to be a linear park? And you know where my heart lies on that one. And again, just a small practical point about that. It talks about lighting in the tunnel. I can tell you that there are so many families that love the spooky dark, and they really would not see lighting in the tunnel as something of benefit or use. Maybe some rechargeable torches at either end with a rack or something might be a better solution. It just seems cost prohibitive potentially for what it would achieve. Finally, on Naseby, Naseby used to be in my ward. It's obviously now Councillor Ware's ward, and broadly supportive of the idea of a country park there. But a big ask from both of us as ex-ward councillor for that area and Councillor Ware as the current councillor. The parish have not had any dialogue or consultation with anybody at this stage. It sits in their parish. They know about it because it came to a draft committee in 2024, I think, and obviously they heard it from us. But they have not been directly engaged in any shape or form. They're working on a neighbourhood development plan. There seems to be an obvious connect that needs to be built into that. So please can we wire those circuits up and make sure that dialogue takes place. One other quick comment. I loved your comments that I have to play back to you. If we don't aim high, we risk achieving nothing. And not achieving everything in a strategy is not a failure. I rest my case, Your Honour.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Really good and valuable contributions. I will take members of the Cabinet to comment. I think Councillor Petter's got something there first, and then we'll go to the floor.
Yeah, on reference on the parks, I was very lucky to visit Marefield Heritage Park, or Castle Park as it's also known, last week. And the new heritage poles have been installed. These are designed to bring Northampton's rich history to life and marking key milestones across its history. The park is looking really impressive at the moment. And I urge you to have a little walk by and have a look, although it's still a building site, so please don't step into it. But you can see the new castle themed play area that's actually in situ. The planters for the community garden, which is going to be really quite impressive for them. There will be improved lighting when we have darker nights. You already see the walking trail that follows the footprint of the original Northampton Castle wall. So this is a part that is going to be quite impressive to go visit, and it's tucked away. So yeah, find it, have a look at it, and it's going to be yet again an impressive place to be. So yeah, go and have a look.
Thank you, Councillor Petter. I may pay myself a visit there sometime over the weekend. To the floor, to members of the Cabinet, any contributions for anyone? No? Okay, and then I will conclude. I'm conscious we've still got a little bit to go through with the agenda this evening, but no, credit to everybody involved in that. Councillor Stansfield, do you want to sum up before I do?
Yes, I do.
Go back to those points.
Obviously, I'll just come back to some of the points. Thank you for all your comments. They will be all taken on board. I'm very much, as Councillor Ashcroft's involved, I'm very much about getting the local communities involved. I'm very much about spreading what money we can through all our areas. I do agree that certain parks have been left to neglect, yeah, and that has got to be addressed. I really thank you for your tenacious spirit to finally get some new play equipment. You know, I really, you're a star, you're an absolute star. Yeah. Councillor Jonathan Harris, obviously, I've used the cycleway myself, a fantastic asset. I wouldn't want it turned back into a railway line. You know, it's got to be there and obviously that area will have future development, obviously in the future, and obviously a lot more people, local residents will want to use that area. I take on board about the, you know, we obviously want to celebrate our history with the Battle of Naseby, but we will have full consultation with and I'm happy to go and with officers to go and meet the council, parish council, sorry. Bradlaugh Fields, yeah, amazing comment. Yeah, I've driven past that, and I actually, I've been a resident for about 4 years now, and obviously you go into Morrison's to put your petrol up, you think, is that the entrance? And I actually didn't realise that was the entrance. I thought there'd been a nicer entrance somewhere else, so I fully pulled that up. You know, there's obviously fly tipping there. There's obviously a car parks in front of it. It doesn't. It's a fantastic resource, and I think, you know, we don't show it off enough, and it should be highlighted where the entrance is, and it should be a lot better than that, and we'll hope to get some funding towards that. Again, the park near the shops, yeah, you've quite rightly said, you know, Lushton Lakes, you know, it's all like it's like one visit. You can go to the shops, then go to the park with your children, you know, to burn off a bit of energy up before you go into the shops. Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that area behind the shop, behind that retail park has totally been neglected. You know, I've seen some of the photos from our fantastic Wombles when they've tried to clear some of that area. It's been disgraceful. And again, it's higher, you know, like I said, we want all these areas brought up, back up, try and bring them back up to standard. And the policy is not just about, the strategy is not just about these 5 new parks. Yeah, it's about we're very lucky, we have 153 parks in that West Northamptonshire. And we can't name every single park within the strategy, otherwise it would be like that, like a big doorstop. So yeah, we do all the parks that need funding, we will try and get funding through. And we're having a proper strategy, we'll be able to get investment into the parks. Without the strategy, it's very hard to get investment. But I do thank you all for your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stansfield, nicely summed up. So if there's no further points so far, I'll thank you all for your input, and we'll seek a proposer to take this report for the vote. Councillor Last, and seconded by Councillor Slope, and through a vote with a show of hands. Thank you, everybody. And that is unanimously passed. We'll move on to point 15 on tonight's agenda, the Asset Transactions Report, delivered by Councillor Slope to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This item takes us from the strategic vision and practical action to practical action. This report outlines a series of proposed asset transactions, both acquisitions and disposals, that directly support the implementation of the estate strategy and our medium-term financial plan. Our guiding principle is simple: do what works for the people of West Northamptonshire. These proposals have been carefully reviewed, and every item represents either positive community benefit or a step towards financial sustainability. Now, that's what I'd written prior to, a little while ago. The reality is somewhat more complex, with local residents and members putting the cases forward in a very, which I welcome, which is great. If I don't believe that a member has seen it and it's in their ward, in a spirit of openness, I will reach out as best I can and inform them of it and take comments coming back, which has been warmly accepted, and it's been taken in the spirit which it was meant. We have to balance what we buy and sell against the finance, and the other side of it is some confidentiality. That's mainly on the purchase side, because if we buy an area of land, or we're proposing to buy an area of land, the price can go up significantly. So it's not usually to do with the sale. It's normally to do with a purchase, and we have to keep that confidential. Otherwise, the word gets out and we end up paying quite a bit more money for it. So it's balancing all these, but please, if you don't think I'm listening to you, it's by mistake. I'll be as open as I can with what we're planning to do, especially if it affects your ward. Please reach out and we'll have a positive discussion. Anyway, let me briefly summarize some of the key items that we're proposing in today's report. And I'll be as brief as I can. So appendices A and B, these relate to formalising title over open space land at the request of local members. This will allow the council to better manage these areas and tackle issues such as antisocial behaviour. The risks and costs are low, and any concerns about potential ownership claims are outweighed by the public benefit. And if the owner does appear, that's a good thing, and we'll have someone to engage with. Appendix C concerns the former Southfields Primary Academy in Brackley. Following its closure, sadly due to declining pupil numbers, we've reviewed every possible use and concluded that a partial sale is the best option. Importantly, we're retaining the theatre building for a future family hub and a long sought after long stay town centre car park, both subject to separate processes. We're also safeguarding the possibility of a council housing scheme on part of the site. Appendix D involves the disposal of a small plot of commercial estate. No viable council use has been identified, and sale will generate a capital receipt and stimulate local economic activity. Appendices E and F recommend the transfer of land to Crick and Wootton parish councils, both of which of whom have demonstrated strong stewardship of local assets and have the community's interest at heart. These are excellent examples of subsidiarity in action. The acquisition fund, to ensure we retain income as we divest from outdated small shops, we propose creating a flexible, quick-acting fund. This allows us to acquire new income-generating assets in a timely, confidential way when the right opportunity arises. Coming to the Abbey Retail Park in Daventry, lastly, I'm pleased to confirm that an urgent leader decision enabled the council to amend the lease structure of this asset, securing over £1 million in capital value. Legal documentation is still concluding, but our proactive stance has allowed the deal to move forward when it mattered. Each transaction reflects a clear purpose, whether to enable regeneration, improve service delivery, or raise vital capital and revenue income. This is asset management in the real world, practical, community-focused, and financially responsible. I commend these recommendations to Cabinet and I invite your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slope. And we'll move straight on, conscious of the time now being 10 p.m. Councillor Baker, you're down to speak. Please do come and address. I'm fearing the same myself in a moment.
Thank you. After such a political meeting this evening, of which I've never known in Cabinet before, I'm really pleased to bring you something that I hope you'll look upon as a benefit to residents rather than all of the egos that sometimes float around our buildings. The closure of Southfield School was pretty devastating to Brackley because it did have falling numbers. We understand why lovely new schools were built in other areas of the town, which people preferred to send their children to. But it is a school that has been there for generations. It used to be the secondary school, so we've got great granny, and mum and dad and everybody else who went there. So it was actually as part of the DNA of Brackley. And I'm very pleased to bring this to you in the hope that you will agree that since the closure of Southfield School over a year ago by the Department of Education, I've actively championed the cause to retain part of this site for the Brackley community, as all of our officers know well. Brackley often misses out being at the bottom of the district, so I'm very pleased that I'm going to push you to really go forward with this. It's vital that we preserve the theatre building to ensure residents have cultural and community services similar to those available in other towns. The space can provide a permanent home for a spoke of the family hub service. The much-loved youth club, a community larder, STEM school for SEND students, along with other early help groups that currently lack a dedicated venue. All vital services to go towards our early help offer. Additionally, Brackley urgently needs a long-stay car park. Parking in Brackley is exceedingly difficult, and during the daytime, it's virtually impossible. If we have long-stay car park, that will mean that people that work in the town can park there, and the limited short-term parking will be reserved for shoppers. I'm going to be short because it's very late at night. I sincerely hope that the new administration will honour the previously agreed plan and allow this vision to move forward. Brackley is a growing town with many new housing developments, has been heard this evening, and another one probably on its way for 700 houses following this week's planning meeting. But it has limited support services. Now is the time to invest in infrastructure for Brackley that supports the expanding community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Purser.
Chair, just 3 brief points. I think firstly, in response to Councillor Slope's point, I think as a council, we have shown good discipline in relation to pink papers. I think as councillors can be trusted with information shared through the pink paper system, and that's worked well so far. So I hope the transparency will also be maintained. Secondly, just support the transfer of these areas of land to parish council. That's got to be a good thing, and that will build confidence between West Northants and the parish councils, which actually has been lacking in the first 4 years of the council. And finally, just to note that the proper process has been followed with regard to the Daventry Aldi site. That's good. Needed an urgent decision, needs reporting back, and welcome the process that's been followed there.
Thank you, Councillor Person. Just for clarity, Councillor McCord, as the Chair of Scrutiny, was consulted on that and came back to me immediately, allowing that decision to take place. There's only 2 pleas to approve that at the time. Councillor Humphreys, you've got a microphone now, I think. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. I welcome this report and have a particular interest, unsurprisingly, in the transfer of Crux Hill in Crick, which I trust you will support. Appendix E makes reference to Crick Parish Council owning the freehold, which would have a positive effect on the communities that the Parish Council and WNC serve. Through ownership, the Parish Council will be able to proactively manage the social and recreational use of the site and to invest in it to maximise the benefit to the community. I can certainly vouch for the positive outcome ownership of the land would have for the Crick community, as well as for the village of Yelvertoft, whose residents also enjoy spending time at this local landmark. Crux Hill is known and loved by everyone in Crick. It's widely used by the village as an outdoor amenity for ramblers, dog walkers and families, and has been an important village landmark for generations. Crick Parish Council has an exemplary record of looking after maintaining and developing its outdoor amenities. You only need to look at its Jubilee and Millennium Woods to see that. They were purchased by the Parish Council and a Woodlands Committee was appointed to manage them. The Woodlands team have done a fantastic job, and people from Crick and from many of the surrounding villages come to enjoy the woodlands, the walks, the wildlife and the information boards. The local schools regularly use the woodlands for their forest schools, and in the Northamptonshire Village Awards that Crick not so long ago won a gold award, the woodlands were specifically called by the judges out for their exemplary facilities it offered and the way it was managed. And the Parish Council has long wished to have ownership of this local landmark. We'll be delighted if the transfer process is approved. Their plan, if approved, is to develop it as part of our woodlands and extend these already excellent facilities to incorporate the hill for all to enjoy. And Yelvertoft Parish Council, Cricks Hill is also an important amenity for Yelvertoft. Fully support the transfer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. I will take questions from the Cabinet to Councillor Slope if there are any. Conscious of time, but please do contribute. None? Okay. Quite happy with that. But I will conclude, and I'll take a point to Councillor Humphreys' point there. I think it's very important that we look at these sites and transfers to parish councils where they can do good, and be pleased to hear that I will look to work with the Director of Assets and Estates and Simon here tonight to look at future transfers where they're appropriate for the benefit of the community. So that's something that's on our forward plan, which I will bring to Council in September. So I'd be pleased to do that. In that case, if we don't have any questions and no officers wish to contribute on this, then John, would you like to conclude before we go to a vote?
I was really just recognise the time, but thanking you for the. It's nice to finish on accord on this point, and very positive comments all round, which are welcome. I'm sure we'll work well together on these assets acquisitions and sales, and yeah, thank you for your contributions.
Thank you, Councillor Slope. So in which case we'll need a proposer to this report, Councillor Butler, but seconded by Councillor Last. Is that, just check if that's okay, because you're precluding yourself from a vote on this, I believe, because of the Councillor Stansfield to second. Thank you. And we'll take that to a vote with a show of hands. Thank you. Beg your pardon, and that has passed. We'll go to item 16 on the agenda, which is Councillor Petter to introduce a report on the letting of vacant town centre and high street units.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Empty shops here in West Northamptonshire can be seen as a visible sign of decline of our high streets and town centres, and undeniably a wasted opportunity. So today's report sets out a clear, structured approach to using new powers under the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act for our council to bring long-term vacant units back into use by triggering a process under which these empty properties are subject to a high street rental auctions, or HSRA, to create a new tenancy of up to 5 years in duration. The council will use these powers should deliver the benefits to communities and economy. It's worth noting that the council's costs should largely be covered by the combination of new burdens grant and the payments of successful tenants, but it is likely there are some costs that would not be covered. These will be intensive to operate, and as mentioned, will involve costs, and it may have some negative impact on legitimate property owners and investment, but at least it will involve for them to be involved in future with their property. So that's got to be encouraged. This is not about the council interfering with the market. It's more about stepping in where the market has failed. It's about supporting local businesses, restoring pride in our high street and town centres in Northampton, Daventry, here in Towcester, and of course Brackley, and showing that the West Northamptonshire is ready to lead and not follow. So we've expressed interest in becoming an early adopter, and we believe this is a chance to set the pace nationally, and we will delivering visible benefits locally. So I therefore commend this report and recommend that the Cabinet endorse the proposed approach to use the powers under Part 10 of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of 2023, as outlined in Appendix A.
Thank you, Councillor Petter. And we've got 3 speakers listed to speak, starting with Councillor Lister. I think you've got a microphone there, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. If we walk through any of our town centres and we see the problem, the empty shops, sometimes for years, creating the dead zones that kill footfall and damage businesses either side of them. Meanwhile, we have local entrepreneurs, independent retailers who want the space but can't access it. I've seen what the prolonged vacancy does to our town centres. It creates a spiral of decline. Empty shops become 2, then 3, footfall drops. Businesses that are trying to make it work suffer because they're surrounded by dead frontages. This power gives us a tool to break that cycle. It's not about attacking the property owners, as you say, but most want their properties let. But it targets the minority who aren't engaging with the market, often due to unrealistic expectations or simply neglect. I'm pleased to see this coming forward. It was developed by the Conservative administration. I championed us to be an early adopter and was brought forward by the previous Conservative government's levelling up plans. Our high streets need this, our local businesses need this, and our communities deserve thriving town centres, not rows of empty shops. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lister. Councillor Purser, you've got your microphone there.
Yeah, thank you. I think I welcome this paper. I think the devil may be in the detail. And we have invested very strongly in the public realm in our town centres, and we hope the commercial sector will kind of replicate that investment. My slight concern is that we manage the market right, and it will require, I think, some careful management and monitoring by our officers. And I hope that the Director of Police will take a real interest in this, because I think there are risks of landlords using it as a way of bouncing us into less acceptable uses in our town centres, and possibly using it to undermine the market. So if we have landlords who are kind of trying to manipulate us to drive down rents, then I think we've got to be careful. So I say yes, I hope so, but I think it's going to need monitoring with some care, and it needs to work in our benefit and not against us.
Thank you, Councillor Purser. Last to speak, Councillor Harris. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Again, I broadly welcome this paper. The only thing I would comment is it specifically talks about town centres and high streets. We do have rural areas and primary service villages which also suffer from similar problems. So can we please make sure that we do not do what we have often done in the past, which is focus on our primary urban areas and not really take account of how we can utilise these types of schemes in other areas. If I take my ward in its own right, we've had 3 empty units for some considerable time now. I've done my best in terms of liaising with the owner of the site, the agent for the site, to see what can be done about it. But magically, it seems to be we're getting there, councillor, and nothing really transpires. So I'm less shy about intervention in the market than perhaps some of my other colleagues are. I think there are occasions, and this is one of them, when it could well be a very useful thing. The only other thing I would comment is in February's budget amendment proposal, the Lib Dems did suggest some funding to support smaller businesses beyond auctions like this to give better access to premises. And I still think there's some merit potentially to look at what that might do to stimulate our small local economy. And I would welcome the opportunity to discuss that further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Okay, to members of the Cabinet to comment on the floor. Anyone on the report? Would you care to speak through it? Yep, please do.
Just a couple of comments. Unfortunately, I think the legislation is very clear in terms of its defined high streets and town centres. So unfortunately, it's the legislation rather than any policies that we're trying to introduce that would limit the scope. Again, we need to get into the detail of that. In terms of Bob's reservations, I think they're shared pretty much with officers in terms of how we actually use this. And again, we will be across regeneration, across assets and across planning, doing that monitoring that you identify there, Bob. I'm hoping we never use this. I'm hoping, if I'm honest, that this is a stick that actually makes the market work. However, if it doesn't, and we do need to step in, then I'm with Jonathan in regards to if we need to use it, we will absolutely use it, and but we'll do it to our benefit or to the town and businesses' benefit, not be manipulated as you suggest. So again, hopefully those were useful comments, Chair.
Thank you. So that's a very valuable contribution. And I will echo Councillor Harris's point. I do believe, the future direction of this looks at the inequalities between towns, villages and the rural area. And I would welcome a review of that and to work with Councillor Harris and Ware on that going forward as well. There's an open door to that. If you'd like to conclude the report, then Councillor Petter.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for Stuart for actually answering most of the councillors' points there. And they are right. There are many empty properties all around the whole of West Northamptonshire that need to be dealt with. And we hopefully now have a way of actually engaging with the people that have been allowing these buildings to be sitting empty for years and years. So I would suggest anybody that has any of these places that they want to identify to the councillors, officers, a member of the public, anybody that can see one, find one, please make us aware of it. And we will look into it and hopefully deal with it and encourage them, the owners, to actually start to use it. If not, we do have a big stick to play with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Petter. So on conclusion of that, we'll take this to a vote. I will need a proposer for them. Thank you. Hasty and Councillor Acosta second, and a show of hands to vote the report through. And that's passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, due to item 17 having an exempt appendix, item 18 will now be discussed first on the agenda, and that is the safe accommodation, refuge and support service for victims and survivors of domestic abuse. And I invite Councillor Thomas Manning to introduce the report to Cabinet.
Yes, hello. I'm aware it is running late, but due to the nature of this, I won't be paraphrasing or speed reading. So, and I'll just ask everyone to bear with, because I know the hour draws late, but the kids rise early and my eyes are now starting to strain. So, wishing I printed this in a slightly larger font. So, just as an introduction, this report seeks Cabinet approval to undertake a joint procurement process with North Northamptonshire Council for the commissioning of a safe accommodation and support services for victims and survivors of domestic abuse, and this includes their children. The new service will commence on the 4th of April in 2026, funded entirely by the Domestic Abuse Safe Accommodation Grant from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. Domestic abuse has a profound and enduring impact. It transcends age, gender and background, affecting individuals from all walks of life, and the harm is not only physical, it deeply affects mental and emotional, social and financial well-being. The trauma experienced by many victims often requires both intermediate crisis intervention and sustained holistic support. Our services must provide not only responsive refuge spaces, but also long-term survivor-led pathways to recovery and independence. Preventative measures are equally vital to stop abuse before it starts. Our vision, as set out in the West Northamptonshire Council Domestic Abuse Strategy, is to improve outcomes and make West Northamptonshire a place where all residents feel safe, supported and free from fear. As a local authority, we have both a statutory obligation and a moral responsibility to ensure our response is comprehensive, evidence-based and shaped by the voices and experiences of victims and survivors. Our commitment is to deliver a whole system that is robust, inclusive and truly centred on the needs of those it serves. Just for context, the current grant arrangements, originally established by the former sovereign councils, has been extended over the past 4 years under a rolling 12-month grant and are due to expire on the 31st of March in 2026. A total of 1.328 million in joint funding has been awarded to EVE and Northamptonshire Domestic Abuse Services for the 25 and 26 financial year. £626,903 from West Northamptonshire Council and £702,931 from North Northamptonshire Council. These cover 51 refuge units, 36 in West Northampton and 15 in the North Northants. EVE currently has a total of 17 bed spaces, while NDAS provides 34, of which 4 are providing independent of funding from the councils. The current grant allows for very little in the way of transparency or detailed cost breakdowns. It was always in the intention of both Northamptonshire local authorities, following the adoption of the county-wide domestic abuse strategy in early 2022, to move towards contracted services for safe accommodation. Commissioning a single contract now presents an opportunity to design a new service model and develop contract specifications aligned with the whole systems approach and the shared commissioning intentions of both councils. This approach will better reflect legislative changes and increase demand, while also establishing more robust and sustainable funding arrangements for the providers and ensuring the compliance with procurement legislation. The delivery of this intention was delayed due to the need to undertake a more detailed deep dive of domestic abuse data under the serious violence duty and to refresh the available strategies needs assessments for safer accommodation. These activities have now been completed. To move to a single contract aligns with the domestic abuse strategy 2022 and reflects legislative changes, demand and the need for sustainable funding across the county. Some of the services being contracted: refuge accommodation for women's only refuge, men's only refuge, specialist drug and alcohol refuge, and specialist multicultural diversity refuge across 47 units of accommodation and bed spaces. These include therapeutic group work with adult survivors, therapeutic group work with children and young people, including play therapy, counselling service, children's and young people's outreach support, including children's IDVA, floating support outreach and community-based, informative and advice helpline, and awareness raising training, housing IDVAs, sanctuary scheme, and the no recourse to public funds. The aims of the service are to provide temporary accommodation and housing-related support, enhance self-advocacy and promote service user involvement, provide refuge for adults and children fleeing domestic abuse, and to offer inclusive, non-judgmental support, to collaborate to raise self-esteem and offer counselling, and be culturally sensitive and deliver timely responses, respect racial, religious backgrounds, and dignity and privacy. The care for children's physical and emotional and educational needs is paramount, and encourage reports to hold officers accountable, improve access to resources and long-term wellbeing, and provide domestic abuse training to staff and partners. This will promote good practice and comply with legislation, develop referral pathways for a wider service access, partner with strong and safer community service, provide domestic abuse expertise to partner agencies, and deliver flexible support to meet changing needs. An overview of proposal and recommendation is to undertake a competitive procurement process and appoint a single provider, and to put it in place with a 3-year +1+1 contract. The proposed contract value totals 7.8 million over 3 years with a +1+1, and is equally split between West Northants Council and North Northants Council with a 2% annual uplift. Any annual increase will be dealt with on a year-by-year basis through the contract arrangement management process. The procurement timeline exercise will be led by the West Northants Council commissioning and procurement teams in collaboration with our northern colleagues, with ongoing input from the Domestic Abuse Coordinator throughout the commissioning cycle for the procurement to contract management. This will go for Cabinet approval today. The tender launch will be on the 27th of August. The contract award will be on December 2025 to start the service ready for April 2026. Just so everyone is aware that the North Northants Council will be presenting theirs on the 15th, which was yesterday, so that should have already gone through. My closing remarks are that it's important that both West and North Northamptonshire councils move forward with commissioning a single contract for domestic abuse services across the county. This joint approach will ensure consistency, efficiency and sustainability in service delivery. By aligning resources in strategic direction, both councils can better meet the needs of victims and survivors, while also ensuring compliance with legislative requirements and achieving the best value for our public funds. It is more than a procurement exercise. It is a commitment to delivering safety, dignity and hope to those affected by domestic abuse. By working together, we can build a stronger and more responsive service that not only supports recovery, but actively prevents harm.
Thank you, Councillor Manning. It's a marathon, but absolutely appropriate too. I've got 3 speakers on this item, starting with Councillor Keeble. I think you've still got a mic there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation, and it's just a shame it comes so late in the evening, because it is a really important report. And in fact, one of the people who was interested in being here for it, one of the providers, unfortunately had to leave. West Northants has in the past had some very good practice in this area, and I want to pay particular tribute to Northampton Domestic Abuse Service, even the Sunflower Centre and others who have who've done outstanding work in the face of real constraints on their resources and real difficulties over very many years. I'm particularly pleased to see the recognition of the women with no recourse to public funds. I think that's really important, and I hope you keep to that, and I hope you deliver on that one. And I also welcome the attention to the needs of women from our diverse communities. You've set out something of the appalling nature of domestic abuse. The crimes recorded by the police do show that the victims are female in 72.5% of domestic abuse related cases, and that 93% of defendants in domestic abuse cases are men and 84% are women. So I think it's unfortunate that in addition to providing some refuges for male victims, that you don't have a perpetrators program, and that you don't deal with that, because that is going to be quite key to dealing with some of the issues around domestic abuse. Obviously, it's a controversial area, but it's one which West Northampton has been brave about pioneering in the past. There's also quite a few areas where there could be quick wins, for example, in tightening up some of the procedures in housing services around eviction of perpetrators, and also about tightening up some lapses in the education services, which enable perpetrators to still get details of where an abused partner has moved to, which I've had to deal with several times in the past, and I'm happy to share the information about those ones. There's also a particular issue about domestic abuse against older women in the Daventry area, and I would ask the councillor to take up that in particular. Moving forward, because I appreciate it's late and we're running out of time. I'm running out of time. Moving forward, I do think it's really important that you maintain the confidence of those people who have provided services so far. Obviously, whether who gets a contract is down to the commissioning process, but those services which I named have held a lot of confidence of women, and the confidence is absolutely key in making sure that women come forward to get help after domestic abuse. And it is really important that those services and the confidence that goes with them is maintained. And just finally, I see that you've. I would say that one of the that actually the providers, those providers I named, weren't aware that this report was coming to Cabinet tonight until I mentioned it to one of them. So, please do engage with them, because they are outstanding services and they will provide a lot of support. Finally, I do notice in paragraph 812 that the future funding remains uncertain. It would be great if you could provide some certainty about that now, but providing some continuity of funding, which hopefully this process will provide for those services, will be key. And I'm sure that, any of my colleagues on the, in the Labour team will be more than happy to do anything that is needed to make sure that we get good and continuous funding for these essential services.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. I certainly note your point there about involving those parties in discussion before bringing to Cabinet. I think it's absolutely crucial they're here, and again, welcome to speak in the public session on those things. Absolutely. Councillor Humphreys, I believe, has now gone. Would anyone like to speak on a part? Councillor Harris?
Really only to welcome the report. The area of domestic abuse has been something that the Lib Dems have championed quite actively. We've been very focused on specifically the White Ribbon campaign. The council took a slightly different path to the route that we suggested. Not directly related to this, I would just like to still advocate to ensure that councillors get appropriate briefing and training on these issues, because often they can be things that sit in our communities that we aren't aware of, don't see, unless you look for them. And therefore, that's just a plea really to say that the White Ribbon campaign carried with it some specific training for councillors around this issue and awareness. We haven't really had any specific training on this area, and I would just request that we do.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I can absolutely accept that recommendation. Now we'll look at that for you, for the interest of everybody in council. Do we have any contributions from councillors, in fact, or officers? And Jane is going to speak first. I'm sincerely sorry, Councillor Ashworth, it is clearly late. You are. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, but no excuses. I must declare an interest at this point, because I am a trustee of Northampton Domestic Abuse Service, but this topic didn't come to me by accident. It's because since 2001, I was working in the voluntary sector, and this job happened to come past me, and I was the right candidate for the role. of which time Sally was the MP at that time, and I received amazing support from her, but only because one member of the community, a male member, who applied for this funding and believed in that role, supported me, that I was able to complete the role that I was given for those 3 years. So I'm just going to share very quickly personal and professional insight into the importance of this amazing piece of work that you've already done, but we could do more. I've worked in the voluntary sector for over 20 years, and back then in 2001, it was a taboo subject. Women wouldn't even come to a group that I set up as a coffee morning because my job title made it difficult for them. So if they came to a group to meet me, it would be all about domestic abuse, so they wouldn't come forward. But after a lot of reassurance, they saw my consistency and the support I gave them without divulging trust and confidence. That's so important, that consistency. But what was more important was when I was being threatened by individual men, they tried to silence me. And they tried to threaten me, and the threat was to report me to my husband to discourage me from supporting victims. That wasn't going to happen. No way, even now. The experience, I think, really strengthened the reason why I'm sat here today. And I hope in the future we will see more young women coming forward and holding that strength. I would very much love to be involved with this because it's something that I've been really passionate about, and I did my dissertation on domestic abuse and I passed really well. I therefore welcome this report and encourage the Cabinet to consider the following critical points in its commissioning and delivery plans. I won't go through everything, but I'll just mention. Domestic abuse can affect anyone and at any time, anywhere, because domestic abuse does not discriminate. Now, a member of my family experienced domestic abuse twice. And both times I was there, but she's in a better place now, but it has a lasting effect. On top of that, when you have religious and cultural expectations, it's even harder. In some communities, domestic abuse remains a taboo subject. There are still dangerous misconceptions, especially where it is wrongly believed that a husband has the right to hit his wife based on cultural, not religious interpretations. This silences makes it harder for victims to speak up and ask for help. The reason why I'm able to communicate this is because I know the religion very well, so they can't have one over me. The long-term impact on victims and children is the fantastic work that Endas and Eve and Sunflower that Sally mentioned. I've worked with all of them and they do commendable work. I don't think you will have enough money to source to the work that they do. A joint commissioning process must be strong and inclusive. It's essential that the joint commissioning process between local authority is robust, that delivers a safe accommodation and support services that meets the needs of all victims and survivors. What's most important is we have to invest in prevention to stop abuse before it starts, aligned with obviously the Council's domestic abuse strategy, community engagement and representation. To truly make an impact, service providers must be visible and active within all communities. This isn't happening right now. Those organisations are very disengaged, obviously because of lack of funding. And those were silenced and obviously because of the stigma. Many community groups are male-led. And one of the key results in information being withheld or distorted is because women will not come forward and report. Information must be available in multiple languages, whether it's on our website or any other source, in any other organisation, schools, GP surgeries, retail settings, because you can reach out to far more people because of the technology that we have. But we could also do more. We could recruit volunteers and staff within the community groups to look at this. Collaboration and conference and continued learning. I would like to propose through the commissioning that once a year you bring an abuse conference led by service providers to bring together agencies from across sectors to share best practices and lesson learned, highlight successful intervention and foster cross-agency collaboration and innovation. The power of awareness and solidarity is so important. We've got the 16 days of activism coming up, which will provide a platform for us to show solidarity for victims and survivors and those individual stories. What is our responsibility is no one deserves to be abused. Perpetrators must be held to account, and we all know this. As a council, we have a responsibility to deliver services that empower people to speak up, to support men and women who may not recognise early signs of abuse, and to provide safe pathways for children who witness violence and need help navigating their trauma. Together, we can commit to breaking the silence, promote inclusive support, and ensuring no one is left behind in our response to domestic abuse. As long as we can go into those community groups and not exclude anyone, that's the biggest empowerment you can have by being there consistent, which is why I am still within my community trying to keep all those community groups together by sharing any information that comes along and making sure I put it in the public arena so that people cannot move away or walk away from that information. But it's not reaching everyone because the information isn't available in those different languages. We mustn't forget, not everyone speaks English. Some information needs to be in different languages, and that one word, domestic abuse, interpreted in different languages with the telephone number, you will get more hits. So I would very much love to be involved in your planning around this commissioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashraf. Indeed, very good. I'll take questions around the room from officers and cabinet members. And Jane indicated she wanted to speak first, so I'm happy to see that.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to come back on a few of the points that were raised. So, firstly, just to say, Rafia, your experience is actually really welcome, and I'll make sure that the team get in contact with you and just get some of that information and experience from you and see how we're working too. This is based on a substantial needs assessment that's recently been done around domestic abuse and sexual violence. So the information that we're feeding into the procurement, and the reason that we're doing the procurement, is that we see the need to actually change what we're doing to respond to some of those things that you've actually raised. So that's the point of doing this. We have got perpetrator programs at the moment. I think somebody mentioned about perpetrators, but we do have perpetrators programs, and we've just started a new one called Creating Equals, which I'm sure the officers can share some more detail on if anybody wants some information on that. And we are refreshing our 3-year strategy at the moment to focus on prevention. So we're really trying to look at actually how do we fundamentally proactively get ahead of this, and the wraparound service with housing as well is also being integrated. So we're working really hard to make sure that we're responding on all levels, and particularly when people come to us in flight mode or, have major concerns coming in through housing. So often we see them not through the reporting, but through those different routes that we have at the council. We have been engaging with NDAS and Eve all the way through this. I'm disappointed to hear that and I will check that they didn't have the cabinet date. The full commissioning timetable was discussed at the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Board, of which they're both members. So I'll have to check how they weren't of an understanding, but they should have had discussed with them, and they have had discussed with them all the way through the procurement process, the commissioning. It is an open procurement, so of course they are entitled to bid in the same way as anybody else would. They can also work in collaboration with other people, and that's the conversation that's been had with them. We clearly value the services. We've extended their contract to the end of the year to make sure that they've got the financial resource to carry on those services until we get to a point where we understand what the commissioning is going to be. And I'm just thinking, is there anything else I need to add? No, I think that's answered all of the questions unless I've missed anything.
Thank you, Jane. Anybody else? Councillor Hasty?
Yes, thank you for all the councillors sharing on that. I think it is an extremely important report and progress being made. I was lucky enough to attend with Thomas at the meeting with Precious Williamson, who basically wrote the report. I couldn't speak for my sort of cabinet position, that of course we're going to be intrinsically involved and obviously give this absolute support.
Thank you, Councillor Hasty. Are there any other members? Councillor Coos, please.
I'd like to say I'd offer my support as well in any way I can. Thank you.
Anybody else before Councillor Manning concludes?
No, I would just like to say any support anyone can offer is always going to be fantastic. This isn't a party issue. It should never be politicised. It's a societal issue. And if anyone has anything positive they can do to help this, then that should always be brought forward. So thank you everyone for offering support.
Okay, here, Councillor Manning. So if we are all in agreement, then I'll need a proposer for that report. Councillor Stansfield, seconded by Councillor Last, and to a vote, please, with a show of hands. Okay, thank you very much. That has passed, and only too proud to do so. So that means we are the last item on the formative agenda, which is actually item 17, and this is in a closed session because there is a confidential paper. So at this point, I do need to invite the members of the public to leave the room so we can conclude. Sorry, I do believe it's only the appendix, but I think it might be discussed in part. So thank you. And at this point, we will now pause for the record the